All right, mind if I pray?
Oh, yeah.
Father, we come before you and thank you for this moment that you bring us together, and you want to release your sovereignty, and you are Lord of the whole universe, and you want it to come forth here to play itself out in Brown County. And that's a bit of a mystery to us, so we're going to sort through it and try and find out how that works. So we praise you for this and ask for your guidance in your name. Amen. Next thing is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, in the dynamic of politics and governing, Kevin is now here to share some things with us.
It's not share, it's going to be real brief. So, just doing a quick outreach. What you have in front of you is the census data from 2016 to 2020, and Tim's referenced this information countless times to show that our LMI numbers have gone down. The current based on that last census, which was done in 2020, the LMI for the county on actual is 40.4, which means that the population in the county, 40% of that is below the poverty level.
And how do you define poverty?
That's defined by the statute for the federal government. I don't know what that is.
You gotta read it, it's not a real clear description.
$4 a week?
And whatever, and we need 50%, right?
Probably what?
You need, I think,
51% qualify for local planning grants.
Right.
okay. So what I have done, since this is, so what I had basically done, knowing and actually trying to go through and do a graphical representation of this, because these definitions or descriptions right here are not very definitive. I can't get a geological understanding of what bean blossom, number one bean blossom is. So if you look on that, that is a graphical representation of the census block data on which this LMI was conducted.
What color should we like on here?
Those are just simply different colored that go through there. You need to look at basically the descriptor that's in there. First, look at the group block. So it says group 1, simply look down here, group 1, and then you will look for the number 9747 and then either 00 or 02. And when that will define. That basically gives you the geographic. So if we look at the first one, it's group 2, 9747. So let's go through and find group 2, 9747 here. This is what they're calling bean blossom. That is that category. The LMI percentage there, 49.4% of the people that are in that census block are considered below poverty.
Ineligible.
Right. In essence, that region or that sector would not be eligible.
So is there any way we could get a map that lights the areas that are eligible and just basically forget everything else?
Should be able to. Tom Riop is, again, this is something that we've not asked for before.
Let's do that, and then we can see what areas are eligible, which is what you're doing here, right?
There's only 3 eligible.
Yeah, there's only 3 eligible, and so you're trying to sort for federal and state grant eligibility.
I'm just basically trying to give us more data so that we have more information in which to go back and target decisions that we want to make so that you can at least see the category. I'm trying to give us tools that we've never had before to give us access to information. Okay?
Yeah, good idea.
It's good and bad because our eligibility actually, because we've been so successful decreasing poverty apparently.
I would
Increasing wealth, people moving down here for wealth. COVID and broadband is the bump.
Because of that, our eligibility for state and federal grants has declined significantly. So it's a good and bad thing, and we just need those 3 tracks that are eligible, and any project within those tracks, we go for grants.
maybe that's a conversation with Whitney, and I know Tim's had done some of that.
And I assume that's where
Oprah shut us off. They said there's no way on the income survey we're going to qualify for any Oprah planning grants. Okay, so if there's other sources, that's fine, but it's not going to be Oprah.
Yeah, you're talking about planning.
Can't we
grants, right?
define an EDA in that area and therefore qualify, make it an entity?
Don't know.
Come
I'm
on,
just
Kevin.
giving you
Come on.
information so that you can go through the
Thank you.
exercise and evaluate
Thank
it,
you.
look at it, and we as the commissioners and the council can then work towards and say, where do we want to go forward? And these are areas, and do we want to try and target particular areas for economic development? Do we want to see where if we're qualified in certain areas? So
Is Helmsburg eligible?
I don't know. I haven't spent a great deal of time with that.
All right.
Okay?
Cool.
All right,
Thanks, good, thank you.
thank you. Well, one other issue while Kevin's still here, it came up yesterday, and that is that Ted finally went over and looked at the police department over there that the town owns, and there, thinks it would meet his needs quite well. And we're looking at switching buildings, trading buildings.
I don't know. That's something that's still left in our decision. It is a thing that we're considering, an option, right?
All right?
But right now, I don't know. Again, that's just on the very rough, basic, it's been introduced, we have not made a decision. I made, and through Tim and them saying, let's have Ted look at it, see if it meets his needs. Obviously, I've got my set of concerns, he's got his set of concerns, and Ron's got his set of concerns. My concern is tearing that building down and replacing where it sits. That's the biggest issue that I have.
Tearing what?
Tearing that building down.
They don't want to necessarily, do they?
There's no definitives in this. This is all in discussion.
Correct.
Right.
But the issues are the financial implications. We cannot spend go bond money on rentals. So
You
that's.
cannot
problem.
spend go bond, from what I have been told from our
Or purchases.
attorney, you cannot spend go bond on purchases.
Purchases, can we do it on rentals? We don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
All right, that's
You mean a
fine.
lease type of arrangement?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So those are issues we're gonna need to think about. So just want to get ahead.
So again, just, this came up yesterday afternoon. There was a meeting. There was a request to sit down with various people to go over and say, what are your concerns with Ted to see? So we can bring that to the table, have the discussions with the commissioners so we can put together a plan to move forward.
I just want to interject here. The commissioners have the decision.
Yes.
It's your responsibility. But I, as a council member, would like to be included in the conversation. That's all.
Okay.
You guys have to make the decision, not me. And I get it. That's fine. But
My one is to basically just make sure that that we're going forward and clearly communicating the plans. This is something that's been proposed that I mentioned in passing a couple of months ago. And then it's just finally taking the next step where Ted was actually over to say, I said, hey, Ted, go look at this and see if this meets your needs. And then because the town approached me, and I shared that with the other two commissioners.
what do they want for the building?
Huh?
What do they want for the building? Are they priced?
Right now, the proposal was a trade
What?
the prosecutor's office for that office.
That's where we start. We see where it goes from there. You said you say do we need the appraisals just to do a trade?
I don't know.
Okay.
Those are all
Intergovernmental
questions.
section, isn't there a different pile code for the intergovernmental transfers?
Right, I mean, if you were selling to a private entity, you could not take less than the average of 2 appraisals.
Right.
Right, when you are transferring between governmental units, taxing units, you don't have to meet that same criteria,
Okay.
average of 2 appraisals. I mean, it's government.
It's
so,
different, yeah.
Right, just like a
Let's
nonprofit.
put our heads together and just make sure we make a really smart decision.
That's the proposal. Again, I'm just trying to
No, that's fine.
work through the 3 of us in a group to broaden our options.
Okay, starting tomorrow, we're gonna have a meeting, correct?
The proposal was to have one, which I didn't
think it's
get around to
still in
letting
play.
you know about.
Yeah, I mean, I
last
think
month.
just the important thing, because both of these properties are public property, that we just have public conversations, not negotiations, but we make sure the public knows what's happening. And so I appreciate you, Gary, you bringing this up. You know, there's no reason why this can't be a transparent process, and let's just keep it that way.
Cool. Thank you, Kevin.
And again, I'm going to have a conversation with Mo, because in that meeting, again, I don't know if it's just simply a discussion. I don't know what that falls under. With the 2 of us there, we can talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, we need his advice, and Susan, because it's a commissioner issue, I assume you should not, I mean, you'd be kind of, right?
I don't represent the commissioners. If they're gonna have 2
Right.
commissioners there, that's a special meeting and they need to advertise it,
Okay.
so.
So, again, if we don't.
So let's meet tomorrow, we'll just talk without 2 commissioners there, and then as you guys progress, I mean, it's a commissioner issue, but I just, you know, just want to see, and at least as a council, public, you know, transparency on how, whatever happens.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just a means by which, again, that's all very, 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 very within the last 12 hours.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
So-
What's it?
Huh?
I remember that, how many square feet is it?
I've not walked it myself.
I think it's 4,200.
Whoa, it's big.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's true, then it doubles almost the size of the process.
1,500.
Ted seems excited about it, thinks he can modify it to fit all his needs, and it's only a 6-minute walk to the courthouse.
Well, it's a long ways.
I know.
I said we could segue.
Or, yeah, right, yes, it's good. That was a good one. Give him the segue with a little cart behind it. I got a
Yeah,
wagon.
right, he can pull,
Yeah, a little red wagon.
in the trailer.
So it'll be, so,
It'll be a hell of a lot cheaper, $2 million.
Oh, yeah,
Why would
it's
they-
another, so again, it's just another difference in opportunity for city board of local.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that would be a
Local governments to
big savings.
Flush it out, see what happens.
Yeah, and I
Fall
would say,
through,
you
fall
know,
through.
The
just,
location's
you
not that
know,
great.
yeah, let's move it forward.
Really,
All right.
you just buy it and give it to the county.
Yeah, right.
Well, again, I'm not even, again, it is just simply, right?
All right.
Just simply discussion.
All right, next one, thanks.
All right.
You can go now,
Thanks.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. See you later.
Yeah.
I'm
Kevin,
sure.
that railing over there needs to be painted.
Oh, the council will be hated. There you go. Okay, next item, I don't have to go in this order, we gotta get through a couple things as we go downstream here, but the innkeeper's tax passed. Scott, you wanna talk to us about that?
Sure.
And
Council asked me I don't know how many months ago now, to work on revenues. Fourth quarter. Thank you. This has been since last year. And as you know, I've been going after several things to meet that task. One is the gate fee bill. That, gosh, the bill itself died a few weeks ago, but the language lived in and out of another bill, and just the night before the last day of session, it died. We had learned that it was basically on life support, and so Representative Hall did a great job keeping that one alive as long as possible. The innkeeper's tax was successful, as many of you know, which was the most important thing we could get done in that legislative session. And so it's, if I'm recalling correctly, FSG estimated $750,000 a year for that, based on our, I think it was like last 3-year average of income on the innkeeper's tax. So the new 3% will generate, at a minimum $750K a year. And if you take that over 20 years, and this is capped at 20 years, the innkeeper's tax was allowed for 20-year period, and we have to renew it. But if you take that over 20 years and you assume, our tourism industry has been growing anyway, but if you add another $20 million investment into the tourism industry over 20 years, I think we could squeak out a 3% annual growth rate, I would hope, with that size of investment. And so if we get 3% on average over 20 years annually, that's about just a little over 100,000 some change. So, that number will go annually from $750 a year to, I forget, over $1 million a year towards the end of that 20-year period. So that's really good. Next steps, a group of tourism leaders, we've talked about this several times, but Gary convened, the tourism leadership, CBC president, CDB president, several folks, large hotel owners, tourist home management companies. And we've been talking about this for months as the legislation progressed, and we've gotten everybody on board. We've got full support from the tourism industry leaders. It's not every single person in the entire county wholeheartedly supporting this. That's impossible. It's impossible. There are ways to, if there are, one thing I would, say is, what we really need is just input from people. If you do think there is a different way to do this, or if you do think the county could cut something in our budget to, speak up, right? Speak up, right? And talk to us so that we can put that to work, right? If you've got a good idea, let's put it to work, right? And so that's helpful. And so the next step on that, Gary, and how to allocate, the tourism group and the leaders that have formed are really, I think a pretty effective group to carry the conversation forward. Darren and Gary, you've been in these meetings, and Kevin's been in these meetings. I think we should consider a group like that and possibly adding, as you may recall, council several months ago when we first started talking about our wishes with the innkeeper's tax. Language, thank you. We wanted to enhance the representation on the CVC board to be more inclusive of retailers in town, art industry folks, outdoor recreation industry stakeholders, versus right now, which is, it's okay that it's heavily lodging oriented, but I think in terms of moving this forward, Gary, diversifying that group a little bit, maybe bringing in the school, and I see Amy out here, bringing in like a school representative, a art representative, which we've already got, Lynn Metzinger Miller, an outdoor recreation representative, kind of these different stakeholder groups. Tourism is broader than lodging in our county, and so I think we need a broad representation of our tourism industry included in that discussion, similarly to what we talked about with legislation. Hand this to them and say, and we should be on that, obviously, and ask them to come up with an investment plan that goes through the CVC and us, I think. I think it's, and I've asked Brian and Pam, and I see Jimmy here to, participate if necessary, but I think we need an investment plan that needs to be approved by us and CVC, and then the CVC needs to present a budget. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but that process of a plan, a budget, and our approval prior to, and one thing for the other two council folks who are present, we did, and Darren and I especially agreed that this would be a good approach, before we pass the innkeeper's tax increase, that we would have this plan in place. So we know,
very detailed, very
finalized. Yeah.
Everything spelled out.
Yeah, such that they can't gravitate downstream into other things.
And so, hearing
If
that,
it does, there's at least a plan for it or something,
a competitive
Yeah,
process.
it's not arbitrary or random, right?
So, so that's that, and July 1, I've got to check that language again. I think the money starts rolling July 1. So we are, what? We're May 1st.
2 months.
60 days.
60 days. Jim, I'm gonna need you to cancel your vacations.
Well, it starts rolling in once we approve it.
Right.
No sooner than July.
But here's
We
the
don't have to
thing.
approve it by July 1st.
Yeah, if you want to lose 100,000 a month,
No, I'm just saying, if
let's wait.
If we're gonna-
if
we're gonna
we,
get $100,000 without a plan, then we're wasting it. So
Well, right. My
The
point
most
is,
important thing to me is the plan,
yeah,
very detailed plan.
Well, the first thing you gotta do
Before.
is, as I said to you on the phone yesterday, is let's not use fuzzy math. Let's make sure that we're, look at the last 3 to 5 years of innkeeper's tax revenue, okay? So basically a 38% bump in revenue is what it's gonna be, and calculate the estimated cash flows going forward, revenue coming in, all right? And let's just make sure that the math that we're gonna use is as accurate as it possibly can be before we even do anything, and that needs to be in writing.
yeah.
Get the math down, make sure the math is accurate.
Basically what that's going to look like is an annual amount.
Well, I figure if you, let's say you get $1.6 million a year, right? So hit $1.6 million at 140%, right? So if you take $1.6 million a year and you hit that times 1.40, now you're 2.2 million back off $1.6 million, right? That would mean additional cash flow of about 640 grand. That's what it means per year. And that's essentially what, rough numbers. acres, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so where you get your 38%.
Because you take your if you take 3% divided by 5, that's a 60% increase, right? Going from 5% to 8%. So now you got a 3% increase, take 3% increase, divide that by 80, or 8%. That's a 38 percentage, as a percentage, a 38% increase in revenue is what it means. Because now everybody that stays all night is gonna pay 8% instead of 5, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming up with that 38%. So if you got $1.6 million, let's say we averaged $1.6 million over the last 5 years in revenue, right?
Yeah.
Because that number's pretty easy. You take that, you back it into the 5%, and that tells you what the total gross revenue is coming in for the year, right?
So that's one way to do it.
Well, it's the mathematical.
Well, simple math is at the 5% rate, we were making,
That's what I'm saying. So you
$1.25
take, I
million.
just watch it through the math,
You
right?
divide that by
No, you don't.
5, that's
FSG did that.
250,000
They
per
said-
percent.
So anyway, yeah, so we just need to walk through, put it in writing, make
Yeah.
sure we understand what that forecasting that revenue going forward is gonna be,
So
right?
you just did the math.
And then, and then the only thing I'm gonna disclose is that, on the subject of, because we touched on it last month, on the subject of, housing, economic development, comprehensive plan, I don't have any issues, but to me, that subject matter in the context is it's managing change as things change over the next 25 years. What kind of change is, if we look back over the last 20 years, for example, I live on Becks Grove Road, and I've got my neighbors that have been out there, since.
Mr. President, do we have time for this?
I don't know, let's go.
Well, I was just,
Change, so
if you give me a chance, I could have been done by now, if you hadn't interrupted.
We don't know that, but go ahead.
So my point is that if you go back on Becks Grove Road 30 years ago, most of the houses weren't there, period. All right, so this county over the last 30 years has, we say that we haven't had added housing. I don't know that that's true. There's been a lot of housing that's been built. And I think, over this last 30 years, and perhaps the last 10 years, what percentage of the housing in this county? Because if we're now at a, 40% rate, what's happened, all right, is that we haven't done anything on poverty. We've had a lot of, ultra high net worth people out of the northern part of the state come down here and buy up our real estate. And they're buying up the real estate because if you look at it from their perspective, I don't blame you, it's a gold mine. So I can come down here and buy a piece of real estate, throw another 300 grand in it, go to the BZA, get it rezoned, and now I've got a really nice cash flow situation coming in. If the county wants those from the outside to come in and buy up a real estate and turn them all into tourist rentals, then fine, I guess that's what the county wants. That will help the innkeeper's tax, because the innkeeper's tax will definitely go through the ceiling on that. If I look at this subject through the private sector in this community, then, if I was in the hospitality retail service sector, I would be biased, and that's what I would try to drive, right? So we've got to have some balance, and my issue with it, I want more residential housing. That's what I want.
Okay, that's an interesting point,
I'm
because
biased on that. I want
Yeah.
residential housing.
It's an interesting point is that in the meetings, the innkeepers seem to want worker housing.
Yeah, well, that's residential housing.
That's right,
That's right.
exactly.
So it's a part of.
So it's like, there's a value there on that, which
Right.
is interesting to see. It's not just a matter of school and things of that nature, but they also have needs for
Right,
that.
so it's-
And Hard Truth, who's now gonna start coming to the meetings too, as a representative,
Yeah.
they have to bring them in from 3 counties. So,
And see, to me, the commissioners, at some point in time, do we look at that comprehensive plan? Do we look at, and, do we pass some ordinances that limit the ability for those to jump in from the outside of the county, buy a house, and flip it immediately to, a commercial piece of real estate?
Well, the problem with that is,
So-
the target for tourist rentals isn't $1 million houses, it's family-sized houses, so.
I know, that's what I'm saying, they're buying the inventory up. I can come into the county.
I mean, it's more specific than that.
You gotta remember, somebody coming out of, the Chicagoland area, what are they gonna pay for a house up there? I mean, you're dealing with people that, got anywhere from probably 2.5, 5 to 10 to $15 million in investable assets. So for them to come down here and buy a $400,000 house that's blighted, all right, and pick it up and then turn right around and stick another $300,000 or $400,000 in it, no big deal for that.
All right, let's get
And
back
that's,
on topic.
and that's, well, that is on topic,
Well,
because
I mean,
we can't,
So
we
what
can't
do-
we can't look
Yeah,
at
I
things
mean-
in a vacuum in short term.
we're talking
We cannot do
details
that.
though. and
Well, we have to do
We're
that.
at a very high level point right now.
Right,
And
the
those
short term,
Conversations will come
your short term
if we can move
is
forward.
simply saying, how do we allocate the new revenue?
Let's move forward and have that conversation you're trying to have here.
Right, but I'm just,
In that
I'm
capacity.
bringing that
Yeah.
up, that, go ahead.
All right, any other points?
Several times.
Any other points on that we need to talk about? And Brian, I'd like you to, you, Pam, feel free to pipe up too at this point.
So when you talk about subdivisions within housing and turning them into tourist rentals, the BZA prevents that automatically because you have to have 1,320 feet in between two tourist rentals, 250 feet between a house and, or a tourist rental and a regular house.
But here's my argument back to that, counterpoint on that, right? I get that, I understand that, but you know what? Where's the historical data over the last 10 years? Number one, I have never in the last 8 years, 9 years, ever been able to get anything in documentation of how many tourist rentals do we have? An accurate number, number one. Number two, what's been the increase? How many tourist rentals have we added over the last 10 years? I can't even get how many new homes have been built over the last 10 years. So we lack that data, and you need that data in order to be able to have a rational and an objective conversation first.
Well, it's good because we're moving
It
to,
is 10 feet from here, all we have to do is walk in.
It's not in there. I've been over there.
all right, I guess let's not argue on that. The fact is,
Go get it.
the fact is it is mushy. It is mushy, but what Kevin's done here is it's step in that direction to clarify things and say what's really going on out there. We could be reaching a saturation point on tourist homes, we don't know.
We
Let's-
call in on behalf of people who want to do that all the time, and the zoning office tells us instantly if it's within X number of feet of a tourist
Yeah, that's the
rental.
zoning.
That's not what this is
The
about.
zoning.
Let's
Let's
get back on topic
I'm
here.
not talking about zoning, I'm talking about how many tourist rentals.
All right, back to the, that's a specific, we're in the weeds there.
That's your way
Back to the
out.
big picture, what is the town's complement on this money? How does that work?
What's that?
Does the town, this extra 3%, how does that relate to town?
Their comprehensive plan includes using that money.
I know.
Part of it.
I know.
One priority.
How does that work?
It's in their comprehensive
It's
plan
their,
under
their
economic
number
development.
one priority for economic
Wow.
development is using
Interesting.
interest tax.
All of it?
They'd like to be helpful in some way,
Well,
or?
it's, I gave you
Oh.
the sheet right there.
Yeah, we haven't really heard much from the town on these conversations.
Are you with the town?
Pardon?
Are you with the town?
She lives there.
She was.
I'm not sure how to answer that question. I have businesses in Nashville. I live out in the county. I
Okay.
represent
Okay, so
everything.
Yeah.
so you're part of the retail
I'm
sector.
not
in
a
Nashville.
Yeah,
this or that.
The
I am-
innkeeper's tax.
However, I
Yeah.
am, my biggest thing with economic development is residential housing. I am a hotelier, but that is my number one
Yeah,
priority.
me too.
So to just say that all innkeepers aren't in favor of residential housing, I think is a reach.
Mhm.
And to your point, we cannot start pigeonholing rules when we don't have the facts,
Right.
the details. Just how many of these tourist homes were new builds that are producing income by way of property taxes? How many were converted from residential to? That's
Those are big
stuff that you need
questions.
to know to make decisions that you're talking about. And without that, it's just shooting your arrows into the wind.
And special exemption is for life, once you receive it from the BZA, but then there's a lot of them that are bought and are turned back into residential. Because,
Absolutely.
you know, I mean,
I'm not trying to be
We have one of
difficult,
those
but
ourselves.
Yeah, there's also the issue of doing a yearly review, so it's not for life. It's a matter of making sure they.
Permitted.
Looking at that too, so that they have to
This is
comply.
something we want to talk more about.
No, not right now. It's more in the
I
weeds.
think it's.
I mean,
But it's factors that are on the table regarding all this. We need to be aware of them.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the innkeeper's tax though, in terms of policies or discussion, so it is a separate, I mean, it's, yeah, I
It's
mean,
something that
everything
needs to be
tourism
hammered
is
out
related,
before-
but
It's something that needs to be hammered out in detail before I'm going to vote.
you want a new tourism ordinance, a tourism
No, I'm
ordinance?
talking about it's part of the
Distribution fund.
detail what Jim is talking about is part of this conversation.
The tourist home ordinance.
No, the tourist home topic.
The near term, short term, right now, in the next, when's the due date, what's the deadline for the
To me, it's
council?
not related, but maybe I missed it.
What's the deadline for the council? I'm assuming I heard earlier, the council has to vote to adopt this 8% innkeeper's tax thing.
It's not an all or nothing. We don't have to do it. It's not 8% or nothing.
But we can adopt the 8%.
It's up to an
But
additional
the council,
3%.
that is legally the council's decision.
Yes.
Correct?
So the question
And
is,
is there a deadline for that decision? When do we have to make that decision?
We don't have to.
It's open-ended.
we activate it as soon as we want. He says that we can do it probably by July 1, was it?
Susan,
Yes,
Would be stupid to leave money on the table.
that's what he's saying.
Unless we're collecting it just to waste it without a point.
The next question I have about
Collect it,
that,
waste it.
no, the question I have about that, if we activate it, how can the town go at it? What's the legal process in
I mean,
that?
that's legal. They can ask for money from somebody else.
Ask
And-
or take?
Yeah, based upon the
It's a
other
county tax.
counties I've studied, the town is subservient to the county in these matters. The county has to basically say, okay, we agree with whatever the county wants to do, and then the county adopts the ordinance.
Yeah.
Right. Is that true?
So-
That's what we know.
So it's up to us to set an artificial deadline of when we address this.
July 1.
Is that what you want?
Yeah, by July
Unless you
1 is the
wanna waste
target.
money.
No, I don't think it's stupid to leave money laying on the table. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, you can start collecting it, it goes to the CBC anyway, so.
It would be really helpful for those collecting the tax to know when that start date.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we've got reservations after July 1st, and we're gonna be taxed with saying, hey, sorry, the price that we quoted is not correct. We need to know as soon as
So you need to
possible.
know,
And that's something we
When
may,
this
we
is going to be
may have to
instituted.
add part of this
So the
rhythm.
effective date, what would be a good
Effective.
effective date for you guys, do you
If
think?
you wanna do July
Part of
1st,
what
that
we
would
need
be
to do
fine.
on
We
this
just
then
need
is
to know
maybe-
it as soon as possible, so we're not
Right.
having to tell our customers, hey, you know, and then it could be that some people are like, we're done with it, we're just gonna cancel. I mean, I would anticipate there would be a few, very few, but there will be. And we've gotta do that public relations piece
Got it.
with it.
Okay.
so you need it yesterday.
Well, not necessarily, but as soon as possible, just, you know, for the benefit.
Liz, are you in
not having-
favor of the 8% increase or the 3% increase?
I am pretty much in Darren's camp and Gary's camp and Scott's camp if it is used as an investment.
Correct.
If we can leverage this increase to apply it to things that will build our tax base, I am very much for it. And in fact, it was your comment last December when this whole thing became public. And Scott and you, Jim, were going back and forth, you know, with trying to pitch it to the public. And I'm like, no way are we gonna increase innkeeper's tax. No way. But then you made a comment about, well, it's just gonna be an average of $5 extra per night, per guest. And that's just a cup of coffee, depending on where you get it. And I'm thinking, no, that is, it's got a point there. It's not gonna be a real huge, big bite for the
Yeah,
customer.
no.
But what if we can finally have a piece of money, a pot, to invest in economic development pieces
Yeah.
and leverage that for grant funding from READY, from Lilly, and we could have an economic development, a new economic development piece with someone who is employed, like the CDB director is, to manage that economic development piece, to build business, to help facilitate creation of neighborhoods, to be that piece to help bring together all the economic development parties to the same table.
And what I would love to see the private sector do in this county is let's define economic development.
Oh, we want to call it quality of life because it
Well, I
has
understand.
such a bad flavor because it's not
But
factories, it's
For
not
me,
smoke.
as an investment advisor, there are 11 sectors in the S&P 500. Economic development is about this broad, okay? And our economy in this county, approximately, the GDP in this county is about 364 million. So, and that economy in this county is primary hospitality in the retail services sector, that's what it is. So we're gonna talk about development, economic development. What's that look like? And so, for example, when I think of it, if I lived up in Jackson Township, I want a really nice convenience store, gas station in Bee Blossom, so I can go get gas for my lawnmower. You know, I live on the south end, I mean, I gotta drive 10 miles to get gas. So what is, when we talk about equity, and here's the reason I'm asking us to get very clear and concise on economic development. I can't attract what, if I don't know what it is I'm looking for, right? If you don't have a target, you're not gonna hit it. And so from trying to attract new business, right? Then what kind of, let's define what that looks like.
We're in the process of doing that. We are starting, we're talking about an
Okay, good.
EDC, Economic Development Commission.
Define what that looks
And-
like.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So that is in play. It was
I
in
would
our
love to
last
see a
2
5-star
meetings.
restaurant in Ellensburg.
I know, that's fine.
So
And we're talking about that.
You know, personally, I think the best way to grow our economy and our tax base is to create neighborhoods that our target people with kids
I'm gonna agree with you.
want to live at.
Right.
And then the economic
We'll
development
follow after.
organically comes
That's
as a
true.
result of having
Yeah,
more
that's
people
fair.
here.
That's
We're
fair.
not looking to have another Hartford Hills necessarily.
So let's narrow our focus to residential housing,
Yes, and-
build it and then it will come.
To have, the things that families want. They want trails, they want nature, they want quality of place. So all of that plays a big part in it. So the economic development terminology is an emotional term that turns people off really quickly. So if you could find a really great way to,
How about managing change?
well, no, that everybody resists change, in their subconscious.
Managing
But-
change.
But, the quality of life is if we could gear it more towards quality of life.
Or managing change towards quality of life,
Yeah.
maintain quality of life, that's fine.
Well, see, when you say quality of life, that, for me, it says, leave me and my horses and my 15 acres alone.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
don't you dare build anything on the 20
Right,
acres across the
but that's
street.
going to take your multi-million-dollar expendable asset people to,
So,
and that's not who we're targeting. We want funds and seats at the school.
yeah, that's a whole different subject there, yeah.
In a practical sense, the way EDC might start is we talked about putting possibly a kiosk in the music center and also in the visitor center that simply has a little website on it that says invest in Brown County. So people who come in here who are probably entrepreneurial or whatever, creative, they may be able to do that. It's like fishing. They may be able to explore some things and say, okay, well, maybe we'll do that. But the issue is right now, we don't have any contact point for that. And that's a problem. So that's what we need to put as a contact point of some sort in there. So those are some of the practical aspects of how it's coming
Tim, what's your
forward.
thoughts? Where do you
Just a
stand,
discussion
where do you stand on this subject?
on what?
The
You
narrative.
just throw out a lot of different
Housing,
variables.
economic development,
Jim,
comprehensive plan.
We've been talking about this for years.
I know.
You're just throwing out anecdotes and onesies and twosies.
Right.
So we're looking at a more comprehensive strategy than little this, little that, throw in a little this, little that. I'm not for that. We'll take a disciplined, organized approach to come up with a plan.
That's what we're forming.
Well, that's what you're calling it. Yeah. It's not what I would refer to it necessarily.
Well, the interesting thing is it's like this group has started, it's like really opening up that the people are forming this thing. I think that's really impressive.
It is.
And it's like, we proactively involve them and instead of imposing it upon them, like saying, hey, July 1st, guess what, guys, here's what we're doing with your money. We're not doing that. We're saying, we want you involved. So it's fascinating to me, some of the things they've come up with, very fascinating.
Yeah, it's been helpful.
We're kind of at that information gathering stage right now, see what ingredients are available before we start.
There's a lot more groups in this county than what you're referencing in here. You're taking one perspective of a vision, not a comprehensive perspective that represents everybody.
No, we're about to go public with that.
I've said that same thing at the meeting, like I said, this is my district up here. Not in town. This is my district for council. The people I represent, I live right in the middle of it. And these people need to have a voice too. You know, because it's their county, it's their county, this is their county. All these people probably go to Seymour and Columbus.
We do.
These people all go to Greenwood, Franklin, Martinsville, Bloomington.
Right.
And then there's this little place in the middle that seems to be driving everything. And everybody out here is kind of left without a voice, and I hear it from them.
We're not gonna have a new comprehensive plan without a door-to-door campaign, let people know what's going on.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
And it's, you know, everybody in those outlying areas, they work. You know, like I said, it's,
Correct.
you know, right now, while we're having this meeting, those people are up in Greenwood, Franklin, Martinsville, Bloomington, Columbus, working, so they can't come in, you know.
All right, can we circle back and get refocused? We need to solve Scott's question. And what we gotta solve right now is we got May, we got June. If we pass it July 1 with a July 15th effective date, just because we pass it in July doesn't necessarily need to take effect. We can establish, it could be August 1st effective date.
Please make it the first of the month.
So,
we don't have to
okay,
if
so let's say
For effective date.
we pass it in July, okay, with an effective date of August 1st. Is that enough time for those that are going to be involved to make the decisions of how that revenue is going to be allocated?
I think it's gonna be a rush. I mean, it's a goal, it's something to strive for.
No, I know, but is it going to be a rush?
I think it'll be a rush. We have so much information to gather and put into this to come up with a decent, reasonable.
So then, all right, do we do?
We can screw this up really quick, or we can be
Effective date?
effective.
It all depends on
Adding a
how
little bit
quickly
of
we
time
can
to
get consensus.
Well, but if we
with
don't
the
set a
stakeholders.
deadline, we'll drift around and we'll not get anything done.
July is the second busiest month of the year, so if you don't have it go into effect July 1st, you're gonna miss out on major revenue collection.
Yeah, but see, from that, it doesn't sound like we have enough time, but
Well, I mean, there's nothing to say that you can't start collecting it and then formulate,
No.
I don't know.
No.
But
Yeah, I mean,
I think you get a lot of pushback on
Well,
that.
it's something we should talk about. I mean, it's,
I'm a hard no on that.
how much are you willing to give up, right?
I'm a hard no on collecting it, so we know
To
what
make
we're
that
gonna
work.
do.
I mean,
We're setting
It's
guidelines.
kind of a lot.
Do you have the
For how it's gonna be
bandwidth to
yeah.
I mean,
go,
that's,
really
Like I
go
said,
at
we
it
can
hard?
screw this up.
We gotta
really
ask
quick.
Meet every
So we can take a little bit extra time to do it right.
We're slow
I know people would be willing to do that.
yeah. So let's figure it out. We can, I mean, we're at the very beginning
So
here.
which guy you don't want to make a decision on that?
There, we can't, we're not, no, I'm not asking you to make a decision on anything
Okay, I thought
today.
you were.
I think we need to just continue with this group, continually expand it to include the other stakeholder groups that I mentioned that were council priorities, shopkeepers, art representatives, and outdoor recreation. I'm maybe missing one, but, and then working through that filter, I think we meet next.
You don't meet until May 14th.
Yeah, we probably need to go to weekly. Yeah, and I think the key is,
Well, we got pushed back to the 14th because there were so many conflicts with
Yeah.
scheduling for the week before
You
that.
might want to send out a note saying we're to try and strive to meet weekly, Brian, so we can get this.
yeah,
And we may just have to set a date to go weekly, and then, you know, if somebody can't, if
Whoever
somebody can't
shows.
make that one, they can't make it, and they'll make the next one. and we'll try to
It'll
keep
take a
everybody-
good month to probably plan any kind of public meeting.
I'm sorry, what group are you talking about? Is this the CB?
It's there's the CBC, there's the music center, there's the town, there's the.
Right, but you're talking about a group that's going to meet.
It's
this
just a
council.
group of people that started to form to go explore the idea of what happens if we do get this 3% and what's the value on all parts of it. So the
It's an
people are
informal group.
Yeah.
informal, totally informal.
Information gathering,
Yeah.
discussion,
it's the
brainstorming.
CVB president, CVC president, music center board member, large hotel owners, tourist home management companies, Kevin, Commissioner Patrick, Darren, Gary, and I,
Public safety.
the sheriff,
Yeah, public safety.
ambulance person, and fire person, volunteer fire person, a shopkeeper,
And a partridge and a bear trap.
and a partridge, yeah. I think that's-
Originally, it was formed to see about how we could get emergency services money to service all these tourists. It has expanded beyond that.
So, Jim had a good point yesterday, a good starting point. We talked about this in the group is, Susan, we need to understand the types of investments we can make from innkeeper's tax in the 4 categories that we've all agreed on, which Parks and Recreation, quality of life, economic development, and hold on, and the 4th one. And we need to understand what types of investments. So, I mean, for 40 years, the innkeeper's tax has always gone to operations, full staff, building leases, advertising, right? And so, but now it's looking like capital, it's also going to capital investments, et cetera. But yeah, it looks like capital investments, even like in the workforce housing realm, what types of expenses would be eligible, you know, and I think it's a really good point that we just say, okay, let's put some legal guardrails around what we're looking at right up front and then focus on those things. And then Susan also, I hate to ask you to do this, but could you help us find in House Bill 1247 the enactment date of that? I think it's July 1. And then secondly, would you glance, well, you'll need to glance through the new innkeeper's tax language that was also passed in that same bill. I've not had a chance to sweep through and see what other changes they made, but it's about fund transfers in and out of the innkeeper's tax fund. They're trying to keep any funds from coming into the innkeeper's tax other than the innkeeper's tax, as far as I can tell, if that still lived in the bill. But we need to kind of clean up those couple details, and then, but yeah, it's, and Susan, I mean, you've got experience with innkeeper's tax.
All right, Scott, can I just intervene? Because you and I had a conversation.
Yeah.
And you misquoted from yesterday. So as soon as I get Susan's attention.
1247.
Susan, my understanding, based off of some stuff that Tim has, how the innkeeper's tax is allocated is specifically addressed with the language at the General Assembly and statutes. It's a statutory issue, is that not correct?
Uniform tax. Innkeeper's
That
tax.
the innkeeper's tax, every county may be a little different, correct?
Correct. Brown County has its own statute.
So what I want to know from from a statutory standpoint through the General Assembly, what is the specific language for Brown County legally and how that revenue can be allocated?
That's what I did.
And I want to see it in writing.
Yeah, that's what I
And I want it
asked
in
her.
writing.
All right.
It's fairly broad and non-specific,
Well,
but it is
but if
specific.
that's the case, then Susan's going to have the responsibility of trying to interpret that broad language to be able to do a legal interpretation in order to be able to define what leeway do we have. And until we have that, we don't make any decisions on how we allocate
that's
that
down
money.
the road.
Period.
That's what I've been saying.
That's not down the road. This is step one. No, step one is to document what the revenue is going to be. Step two is to document specifically the language and the interpretation of the legal.
It's 2 step ones.
Step one, step two.
The state has a list of all the innkeeper's tax by counties,
Yep.
every one.
Where is it?
Chapter 14, Tippecanoe County, Chapter
We just
7,
need to work.
they're the most specific on how that money's spent, Tippecanoe County. You go out and Google it. Go out to Indiana.
How do I find Brown County?
It's out there. You can go Indiana,
If
innkeeper's
Susan can do
tax.
that,
6914.
I've
Yeah,
sent
you
it,
got it.
I've sent it to you.
You got it.
Huh?
I've sent it to you.
Well, I didn't read it.
Yeah, well. Good Lord.
Well, that explains
All right, so
Because
Susan,
I was
is
going to
that,
see if this passed. Why would I read it until it passed?
so.
Do you have the statute covered?
6914.
What is it?
6914.
No, I am now that it passed. Why would I read it until I know?
I mean, that's the
Well, it's-
existing Brown Counties, like, so the new,
Okay.
right, so the new
Uh,
language hasn't been incorporated in that. The state won't do that till July 1.
So you won't know until.
Yeah, what you're gonna read right now is the old.
Yeah.
Well, why would I do
No,
it?
it's,
I don't
So-
believe the statute's changing it.
no, we've got the language.
No, in the updated one, it's on the Indiana code, or is it still in the bill?
It's still in the bill.
That's
I
what I'm
doubt
saying.
they-
If you
yeah.
look up FIC 6-9-14, you're gonna see Brown County's innkeeper.
What is it? Let me write it down.
I see
Yeah, I know.
6-9-14,
Okay, and that's the old code.
but it's going to be updated. It's
I know.
official, yeah.
Right. Well, my understanding is, Scott, my understanding is, though, based on the old statute, you know, not a lot of leeway on how that every dollar has to be spent on promoting tourism.
Well,
Is that true?
Broadly defined
Well, then we need to clear this up, because I'm
and
confused.
subject to interpretation. That's-
And very good, get very crystal clear on what we can do and what we can't do.
Well, that's on our agenda. Brian's been talking about that. We've all been talking about it. We need to have
Get it right.
probably Susan at our 14th meeting. Are we ready for that? We waited to see if it was passing. So have Susan at our
yeah,
meeting to see what can we spend it on.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, we know what we've always.
Susan, if you could, we'll try and invite you to that if you're available.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can be,
I don't know
but
what.
Can't?
right now, no.
Okay.
It may
Can I
change.
share it with you?
Oh, boy.
Scott, it's real simple. I don't, as a fiduciary, my world that I live in, I have to be objective and rational and data-driven and fact-based. And what I don't have, I've got a very low tolerance, all right, and a big boundary for very subjective anecdotal statements. I don't like subjective anecdotal statements. If we're gonna have a constructive conversation on a serious issue such as this, right, then let's get crystal clear of what we can and cannot do. Let's get it in writing, and let's make sure we all understand what we can and cannot do, period.
Understood, Susan?
Yeah.
Do you understand it?
No, that's what I just
I
asked her
want
to do.
objective, I
So,
don't want fuzzy math, I don't.
I don't know what the confusion is,
Well,
but. anyway,
All right, so
we
we're
agree.
going that
Yeah,
direction. You guys just think differently, that's fine.
I guess, yeah.
All right, any other thing before we move on?
Jim, anything else?
No,
Okay.
that's not
Good. All right, innkeeper's tax. Next item on the agenda is assign council members to departments for interaction and oversight. I've got a sheet there for it. There's 20, I've got 23 departments you can add or subtract as necessary. Which council member wants to do it?
I'd like CBC and CDB number 23 and number 18 probation correction
Any problems with that? Anybody want to fight him over that?
and circuit court prosecutor, I mean, if that's helpful.
You're on that committee, aren't you?
Yeah.
What did you want again?
15, 16, throw 17 in there too, public defender. 18
You want all?
and 23.
15, 16, 18, and 23.
Yep,
And
Scott is
17.
taking,
And what?
did you say 15?
15, 16,
Oh, and
17,
17, yeah.
18, and 23.
Scott, please, come on.
We're moving fast, Jim. You're slowing us down.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any idea what you said. What do you like? 15, 13, 16. Scott, taking 16, that's Scott.
This is up on the board there, if you want to see it.
Scott.
She'll send us out.
Yeah. Julie, I suppose you'll send this out.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right. Other? Commissioners, I meet with Kevin. I can do that.
What about the other two?
Well, I don't care either way. Do we need to have formal meetings? We just get insight. This is going to be a developing process to see
No, it'd be
what are
good
their
to get-
needs and what do we need.
Yeah, it'd be good to get updates from the commissioners at our meetings. I mean, we talked last meeting about just lack of communication between our boards and how our conversations just seem to not go anywhere. And so I think
I agree.
we should be giving the commissioners updates in their meetings, and the commissioners should be giving us updates in our meetings,
I think that's
at every
great.
meeting.
We should be working together hand in hand.
So Gary.
Well, what's it
you
going to
wanna
take
do
to do that? Well, I can do that. I'm not sure I'm popular in the commissioner's office, so.
that? Well, that's
Throw it out
we
once.
represent the public, so that's why we're here. It's not
I
a
don't-
personal
I
issue.
don't care if it's, yeah, I agree with that. That is a very good point. We have absolutely no business doing personal agendas, personal biases, any of that stuff. That is malfeasance in terms of elected officials as far as I'm concerned. If you cannot put those aside and serve the public, you shouldn't be in that office. So, we talked about that above the line.
Before we need to define the role and responsibility of the council member to these departments.
I agree.
And what the expectations are of the council member that's going to volunteer to these departments. And I had a conversation yesterday with a main elected official, I'll leave the names out of it, but they are all in favor of this. And at the core of the issue is for the council member to clearly understand their budget, first and foremost. So we're getting ready for the Form 1s. We sent out a memo of understanding here, Gary, you did this week. And so if you're going to take on those departments, then you need to go in and sit down with them on their Form 1s, understand the challenges they have, and if they have issues, then your responsibility is to come back to the council, bring us up to date, because what we can avoid is there's no reason to waste the elected official or the department head's time having them come before the council when they really, the reality is they can reach out to you and say, hey, Scott, I'm running into problems and here's why.
Exactly.
Period. Okay, so we've kind of streamlined the process. And then once the council member works with that department, clearly understands the challenges they face with regards to their budget issues, then we can bring that back, and that can be part of the agenda every month when we have these special sessions. So that now we're all kind of on board. And then if needed, then that elected official or department head then can become before the council with the request. Therefore, we're already we already know, what's going on, and it's a very streamlined, easy process to follow, and it makes it less stressful for everyone involved.
For the liaison.
So yeah, you're a liaison. And then the other part, the last thing, I don't know if I mentioned it, but then Gary, you'll have to send out an email, to all these department heads, letting them know that here's your rep, Scott. Scott's the key person. And if you have any budgetary issues, you contact Scott first.
Yeah, it's a flow of information both ways. From them, information from us.
Right, and then everything has to be complete, and keep in mind, we need to make sure we document, so fire up Word, and do the best you can, and put it in writing, so everything's in writing. So we can document what we're doing.
Okay. Okay, I got 3 things
Okay,
up
give me-
there.
Give me 2.
You want 2,
Is that
auditor?
okay, Julie?
That's fine.
Uh, 17?
Scott's taking 17.
Yeah.
No, 17. Oh,
That's-
you got him at 18, 19, 20, and 21.
Well, you can't see it. It does say so.
Huh?
Oh, you're looking at the.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
number 14, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you're,
Easy mistake.
okay, you want clerk.
Yeah, clerk election board.
Okay.
I'm gonna be working with them on stuff and everything.
Yeah,
Veterans,
Joel could do that.
13,
Yeah.
13, I skipped 13.
Well, 10 or 13.
Sorry, 10, I keep looking all the
Use
way
the
over.
words instead of the number.
Veteran Services, number 10. Non-emergency services. Yeah,
Okay.
take emergency services off.
And Gary, as the financial guy.
And put me down on 22.
Okay, go ahead.
board, I think my skill sets would align best with I was gonna say auditor and treasurer.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Darren?
You can come in here too. Okay, yeah, you can come in.
Yeah, it's not exclusive.
Take auditor if you want. And we can both be in there. I mean, it's not,
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, if you're in there, somebody's gonna need to
Yeah, you guys.
be there to
might-
moderate.
We just need a
You may
formal
have to come and clean
contact.
up things too. You may need to on that one.
Well, Jim's been in there. How about we give auditor to Jim?
Can you go out in front of that, let me fire up a big fire and see if, stand in front of that automatic braking thing works. I don't care whatever, I mean, it's.
I know, I can take.
Yeah, I thought Jim in there
IT.
You can take me off, just take me off all things.
So Jim, you're treasurer and auditor?
Yeah, I think so, don't you? I mean, treasurer, auditor, I mean, you could put, Mary down on the assessor, I suppose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they all tie together.
They all kind of tie together, There's 3D and some of this other stuff we've got going on, yeah.
Put you down there for.
And I'm on GIS anyway, so it's just, I'm not that real.
And the recorder is fairly simple, they've got their own perpetuation fund that they.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't, there's the,
Who's
Should I
doing?
speak up now?
Yeah.
For this?
Sure.
the sheriff,
Yeah, you should be the sheriff.
emergency services,
Yeah.
the
Okay?
health department.
Yeah, you got health background too.
What about
Well,
corner?
Judy
No.
wants,
Joel wants corner, actually.
Does he?
Joel?
Yes.
I don't hear him object.
Yeah. Speaking of that word, is he on vacation?
And veterans as well.
Yeah.
well, Darren's veteran
You can
too,
be
so.
on veterans too.
Yeah, we can double up.
Yeah, there's no problem with two of us being on there.
Well, as long as there's one, they know what, there's one point of contact, one's primary. Otherwise, they
Yeah,
get
primary,
confused,
secondary, yeah.
they're confused that somebody's doing something and nobody does anything, you know?
If we're both on there, one of us
Jim
will
doing the
evolve
recorder
into
too.
the primary
Yeah.
contact.
All right, we'll put both.
So that was 4 or 3, I guess.
The sheriff.
At least 30 hours.
That's okay.
That's right.
I'm retired.
50.
You wanted health too. Now Judy wanted health also, but we
You
can
know
put
what?
two
I
on it.
actually have a degree in healthcare administration. I'm a nurse, I'm an x-ray tech. I ran a medical department for the Marion County Jail for 3,000 prisoners. So I think I've got a pretty good background.
We'll put you both on there. You've got a good background. It's be fresh
No
blood
kidding.
too. Yeah. Nobody wants to corner? Sorry.
Nobody wants to corner.
It's kind of dedicated.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Joel's already involved with Purdue Extension on their board, so we'll give that to him.
Oh, yeah. Stick a point.
All right, anything else?
But Joel really did want corner.
Did he?
Yes, he did. I've heard him state that several times.
Come on, are you serious?
I am
You're
serious.
not throwing him under the bus?
I've heard him say, no,
Give it to him.
unless he was kidding, but I know he said that multiple times to me.
All right. Anything else? Want to fight over these?
It's just a dead job.
And Gary, why don't you take highway?
I'll take highway, I don't
Let's do
care.
that for highway.
You already kind of did them anyway, don't you?
Every so often.
And what about Judy for planning, zoning, parks and rec?
I don't hear her object.
Judy, planning and zoning, maybe? and Joel?
Yeah,
Well-
Judy's right, I mean, that's her-
Planning and zoning, I'm somewhat involved with the comprehensive
Yeah,
plan.
you put
Okay.
that, that's you then.
Yeah,
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 let's put Joel in Parks and Rec,
yeah, yeah. You go down that whole week.
and Judy in Soil and Water.
all right.
Okay.
And who's commissioner update? Who's gonna, Gary's
Do we want-
gonna do that?
Once you guys decide, I don't care who we have.
On what?
Commissioner,
Updates, Jim?
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can be a commissioner liaison.
Well, it's,
You and I?
it's,
Do that?
the way I'm picturing that.
Commissioner? Oh, I thought you were commissioner.
I know. Who, me?
So it's Jim?
He's less
Oh,
volatile.
are you really? Why don't you submit that in writing and then we'll.
It is, it's right there. Your name's right there.
Who's GIS surveyor?
Huh?
Yeah.
Who's the surveyor? Jim?
The surveyor and Jim was
I'm
just.
serious.
I know you are, but I'm not.
So Jim, you still want to be surveyor and gist, or you want to give that up?
Huh?
You want to still be surveyor and gist, or you want to give that up?
If somebody else wants it, have at it. I mean, I haven't talked to him or eons, so
I'll do surveyor.
you can take it, yeah.
So wait a second here, let's go back to commissioners.
Take it.
Jim is hedging on giving the
No,
council.
I'm not, no,
an
no,
update.
no, 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 no.
I think that's an important piece of
No,
that.
no, 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 no,
He's
no.
You are gonna give it?
Give what?
Council update from the commissioners meetings? I think that person. should-
Okay, you're asking me now to, you're, with your requiring, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
You're handing out a mandate, okay? Is what you're doing.
I kind of felt like you did that to me earlier, so
On
I'm
what?
trying to get you back in your big.
Hey, we're not doing personal agendas here, boys.
No, but I do think, however it works, but the commissioner, we've got to have somebody update the commissioners on what we're doing.
Yeah, agreed.
And we'd like to require.
Yeah, but that you're requiring me to pick up, you know,
No,
there's a
you-
finance committee,
Let's
you
take
got
Jim off.
special
Let's
sessions.
take too much, it's too much work, I can tell already.
No, what are you saying, Jim? You want to do it or not?
You want
Yeah,
to?
Is he the best
I
man to
will
do
work with, and what I will do is, I was thinking it was the other way around, is that I'm working with the commissioner's office, right? And actually more, I'm coming back and giving you guys an update, the council body on what the commissioners have got going on, some of the challenges they have, right? Because that's what I said, you're flipping it to the other way around.
Jim, is
And
it,
if you want to go to a commissioners meeting and know what's going on in the meetings and go on.
No, that's not it. That's not it.
I'm gonna, as far as updating the commissioners, all right,
Yeah.
what's going on in the council.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually, the flow needs to be the other way.
Well, I'd like it to be both ways.
Okay, but Tim's here, Kevin's
She's got
here,
one thing.
I'm gonna be in constant or conversation
No,
with
she's
it.
with
And as I receive information, I will certainly make sure there's a free flow of information back and forth. So that because the goal with this is that all 10 people are always, try to get everybody on the same page.
okay,
Yeah.
the other thing is, these aren't locked in cement, we can adjust and change as we go downstream if we find need to.
Because now while you were at this tit for tat, I had a conversation yesterday. You remember when you jumped on the bandwagon for the mental health?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
All right, boys, let's go, we'll go around from here.
We need to pick that back up.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need to let that slip through the cracks.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
So, because
Jim.
I went down.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with some of the people over in the courthouse yesterday, right, on budgetary issues.
Yeah.
And
Their budget got hammered.
so,
Mental health budget got hammered in the budget.
well, we probably pick that back up.
So by the way.
That's the thing, you remember when Scott, because he,
What you're just saying, objectively, we need to pick it up, who cares what
Let's
Scott
not
said?
drop it off.
The fact is, something needs to be
well,
done on that.
let's put it back
right?
on the radar again.
Okay, mental health, mental health goes on the
Yeah,
radar.
Yeah, I haven't talked about this much, but the innkeeper's tax collections, the 20 million over 20 years is straight into mental health for our kids, our adults. It's the positive side. You're thinking on the.
Well, here's what
This is a very healthy.
here's where I think the role on this subject is how do we, the challenge with that conversation, mental health conversation, is not a feel-good conversation. There's nothing feel-good about it. And an issue is how do we, and this is what was discussed in the conversation yesterday, how do we take that and get, basically kind of try to start a community conversation about some of the challenges we as a county face in the context of the subject. So it's more of a marketing, and PR, trying to increase awareness. This is what needs to be discussed.
So is that gonna happen through, for instance, the court system or some other means?
No, this is.
Let's talk about this.
Let's talk about
We're not gonna
today.
solve it now, but it's on the agenda for next time.
Scott drove the narrative,
Let me do
he did a lot of
this.
stuff, he went on IBC, he did a lot of
Let me do
stuff. We just didn't bring it back and talk about it.
We know
Goody.
in the tourism industry, there is
Thrilled.
also a need for mental health substance use
That's gonna
disorder
be
treatment.
another
Your
shit show.
workforce. And so let's talk about that in the context of the innkeeper's tax, and if tourism workforce would benefit from, a mental health investment, treatment, whatever it is, let's talk about it, kind of like workforce housing.
Yeah, and Micah, what's lacking is how do we get this subject out to where we as a community can talk about it
Okay, well,
and educate ourselves on what's going on.
before we waste time on that, that is a
I
huge
know
stress.
there's so many different people, there's a lot of people involved now, but it's not so much, because I get the emails, I know there's a ton of people that are already actively involved on this subject, but I think what's lacking, and this was the conversation.
Why your
we had
meetings
yesterday,
last so long.
what's lacking is you got core people that understand this challenge and what's going on, but the general population of the county doesn't have a clue. Okay?
All right, so we need to go on that.
That's the missing component, is how do we, promote that subject, if you will, to where you can increase the conscious awareness of those in the community of some of the challenges we face. Like, for example, I think we're spending $5.5 million approximately on the justice system, and of that, if you go look at the incarceration rates throughout the state of Indiana, most of those that are incarcerated, I think 60-70% is drug-related issues.
So, back when I was doing it, 7% of the population is mentally ill, and that included the incarcerated. So you figure about 7% of the population, I'm guessing, if that's accurate today.
Yeah.
So around, you know, one of us on the council here probably.
I'll just, I'll wait. That's not-
All right, so we'll discuss that in June. We got other things
Yeah,
on the
that's fine,
agenda.
but I just, Scott, we need
All
to
right.
not let that slip.
Our next item on the agenda is to go bond transparency and accountability. It's a question that's being a municipal advisor. We can discuss that now or go on to Reedy and come back to that. It's your call.
We got Tim here. What's the update? It sounds like Kevin has done some work on that. Tim?
We're interviewing somebody.
Okay, my concern on that curiosity is that may work fine at this moment. But what about setting a precedent for transparency and accountability between departments, meaning separation of powers, things of that nature? Because we talked about it briefly before. Let's say that, well, whatever, if you use DLZ, for instance, as your main person, it could look questionable as to the interaction there. It's not as objective. And also the fact that we are on the hook for the money. The buck stops here. What do we want to do? How would we best present transparency and accountability to the public? What would it look like? Do we need to have that conversation? If you don't want to, we won't.
I don't, I'm Gary, because I'm getting a lot more thought to this issue, this subject. The 7 council members are all supposed to represent their own respective areas. And so I'm Van Buren. And, you know, same thing with the commissioners. And to me, we don't need to blow this up into a big, it's not, an issue is you got the 3 people over here, we know what they're supposed to do. You got the 7 people over here, we know what they're supposed to be able to do. And an issue is the 10 of us all should be working together, right? And be aware, you know, for example, with Kevin coming in this morning and saying, hey, heads up, we're talking about, you know, we all know that we had a $2 million project down there with the prosecuting attorney's office because $2 million of that $4 million was borrowed to build a new prosecuting attorney's office.
Yeah, we know that stuff.
No, let me finish, please. Stop cutting me off.
He's on the roll.
So you have that, and now all of a sudden, right, you have this new building that pops up out of the blue.
Right.
I didn't know anything about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so an issue is that's the commissioner's responsibility to negotiate that deal. But at the same time, the commissioners can also, just like we can, make sure that we're on the front end and we're aware of what's going on behind the scenes. And I think where we get into problems is when we get one person that begins to work the deal back door. They're going to keep their cards, they're going to hold their cards close to their chest. And then what they're going to do is then they're going to march into the council at the last minute, pop it on us and use an emotional ploy to say, hey, I need $100,000. I've been working on this deal for 6 months. You guys didn't know about it, but I did it deliberately because I didn't really want you guys to be involved because it's my deal. And that to me is what we really need to try to resolve and keep that, you know, so if there is an issue that pops up, we need to let the commissioners know right up front. And as soon as we know it, the commissioners need to, or should be obligated to do the same thing to us.
Probably should be. You're saying shoulds and cans. That's.
Right, yes, so.
But what if it doesn't happen that way?
I know it doesn't.
Is that not happening right now?
It hasn't happened. We've had, I call it tribal leadership. You
So
get-
how do we
you get an ego
protect
in place, and it's my gig, and I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna drive the narrative.
That's not how it's all working, but I mean.
It has historically, you can't, I'm talking about historically over the last 20 years, it's been, you've had a couple of people that drive the narrative, because if you think about it, you got 10 people. If you got 2 people, you know, basically working the backdoor deals, driving the decisions, you know, and then you keep the other 8 people stupid.
So how do we prevent that?
We put stuff in writing, we communicate effectively, you know, and we focus on, you know, if we're gonna make a claim and we're gonna make a statement, make sure that you've got, you know, it's objective, you've got the fact pattern, it's rational thought.
What if they don't want to do
hold each
that?
other.
What if they don't want to do that?
then we got a problem.
That's what I'm saying, we
What-
have different departments, separation of powers, holding each other accountable. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Well, I don't see what's wrong with that.
So what do you do?
Why are we against it, is my curiosity.
Well, I'm not
Why would
against
we be
it.
against
I'm
it?
not
Why would we be
against-
against them
who's
holding
against-
us accountable?
Who's against it?
I don't know. We don't seem to have, doesn't get some
And
hairy legs.
are you, on this subject, are you speaking, because this issue evolved out of the $4 million, bond issue, and it evolved out of the owner's representative on these construction projects,
Which
correct?
implies accountability, yes.
Okay.
And you brought it up to plain, well, it doesn't have to be limited to that, it could be oversight. To me, it's an interesting exercise to see, is the council and the commissioners willing to work together to say, what's the best way to present transparency and accountability to the people?
Gary,
Period.
I don't hear that.
So I don't think, to me.
That's
I don't-
my concern.
I don't think it's an issue of transparency and accountability as much as an issue is, let's make sure we ask all the questions that we should be asking.
So what if they're not being asked?
Well, that's.
What
a
if they
real
hold it
problem.
close so highly protected? That's all I'm saying. What's wrong with it?
Well, there's nothing
What's
wrong with it. We need to move in that direction. I mean, I'm an advocate for
We got
us.
an opportunity, let's
How,
move.
but the issue is.
We don't
how
wanna
we
do it,
move
we're
in that
dragging our
direction.
heels.
I mean, Gary, do you think we should hire the construction oversight person?
I see, that's secondary. The issue is how do we provide the transparency and accountability to the people, period. What's the best way to do that? What's it look like?
I don't
If
like.
we're gonna be totally objective, what does that look
Well,
like?
here's why I like a report to the commissioners, is because I don't like commissioners reporting to the commissioners on what the council's policies are, and what the council's position is. I like the council reporting to the commissioners what our policies are. I don't want words put in our mouths.
Okay, but stop, Scott, stop.
It
Scott.
doesn't, sometimes it's not accurate.
What policy do we have in place in writing?
Well, that's
Explain
the
that.
problem, because
Explain that.
policies are explained that aren't
What policy does the county
And-
council currently have in
Like
place
that.
that's online?
Well, I think the finance committee is working on some policies. If I listened to the last commissioners meeting, you guys are working on some
We
policies.
don't have anything in writing online.
And that's why I don't like it being presented to the public in a way that it's like, we haven't even heard these policies as council, and then we have a commissioner presenting to the
Well,
commissioners
see,
on the council.
And so part of this issue, because we're talking about a leadership role, is that we, the council, I think a good start to move in this direction, because we're not going to solve it today, is we as a council need to hold ourselves accountable and establish what leadership looks like. What's our council's policy?
Let's communicate.
And let's
Great.
communicate. Let
With the
us,
commissioners.
no, with us. Let's
And
start,
us.
let us, the 7 of us, work on us, and then they can work on them, and
Yeah.
then maybe we can all come
And
together.
not getting each
But,
other's names.
us and them are to serve them.
I understand that, Gary,
So
but
why
until
don't we put policy
we
in
have to
place?
get our act together first.
I'm not even sure what we're talking about here, guys.
I don't see why we can't put our,
And let me give you a valid point. We got to get our act together, Julie. When did we pass the 2025 salary ordinance?
Just.
Why didn't we pass the 2025 salary ordinance in October? Why didn't we pass the budget
we'll
in
go in that
September?
direction.
It's supposed to be
That's
passed
what I'm
by
talking about.
December.
Let us get our act together.
That's fine, that's fine.
First.
But when something shows up on the table, why can we not address it? The beauty of the Constitution of the United States was separation of powers for accountability purposes.
Right.
Can we not do that?
Jim,
What's
you're
wrong
on
with
the
that?
finance
Well, I don't understand the
Jim, You're on the
resistance.
finance committee. Are you guys working this out so we pass a salary ordinance on
We were
time,
talking
a
about
budget
that.
in timely fashion? You guys have.
Salary ordinance is the council's responsibility, the budget is the council's
You guys are not
responsibility.
working on.
That's not the commissioner's responsibility, that is the council's responsibility, okay? Yeah, we're moving in that direction, all right? And so what has to happen, and, this week, to give you an update, Eric Burton has reached out to Jerry Hickman, and I'm excited about it, right? Because I've got some stuff I need to learn from Hickman on the county highway department budget. And we're gonna have a meeting, and we're gonna zero in and start conversations about the 2026 county highway department budget. Now, I know that that's the commissioner's responsibility, it is not the council's responsibility, right? But it is our responsibility to pass the budget. And what I want to know is I want to know what's in that budget, and so we understand what's in that budget, so that when we go to pass the budget, all council members are well informed of what's in the budget.
And the finance committee is gonna help us.
Yes,
Yeah, when will that start?
it's already started, we're working on it now.
So
So yeah.
what we're trying to foundation for here is to prevent that person who holds it close to their hand,
Yeah.
and they come forth and say, and the problem is when they do come forth, all of a sudden we're faced with, well, do we shut them down and at the same time possibly slam the people just because it does have merit?
I hope the finance committee doesn't come before this council with one of these approaches. Because I am not.
I just don't understand the resistance to the fact of accountability.
And you're gonna hear about it.
Yeah, I don't, it's an opportunity for
This is not
accountability and
some private
I don't see the, why would we be against it?
Yeah.
Why? I just don't see it. Give me a good argument.
So Gary, we're headed nowhere quickly.
I know.
Can we
Yeah,
move to the
we
next
are
item?
heading,
Yeah, we're gonna have to go to the next item at the moment.
Well, that was a fun little debate.
Glad you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lively.
we'll take input from the people if they want that accountability and transparency. This sometimes irks me, because I have to be in there and I have to see people make decisions, and I have to realize it's gonna take 6 months to get it to the proper place, or we're gonna have to make the decision and it's come up with us and we don't have a background to get it, but it needs to be done to serve the people. And I'm trying to put some things in place, policies, Jim, that protect us from any future arbitrary, random stuff that comes down the line in personal interests.
Right, I mean,
And we're having difficulty trying to even do that.
Well,
We ask for it, then we try and do it, we say, no, we don't do
I'd like
that.
to start with public finance. That's a terrible idea.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this is government, we'll go on from there. Yeah, right. Okay, number 6, Reedy handle payroll till WIS finishes and we hire someone. I changed it, Julie, payroll.
See that?
Yeah, you all got the email that I sent out to everybody, right?
Yeah, we
Did
did.
everybody read it?
We didn't read it.
I got a copy of it.
You said you did.
Did I
Send that again to-
No, I said it again to you, Mike, I sent it to you.
All right, so is that acceptable?
Hang on a minute.
It saves us money, actually, so it's acceptable, right?
Just real quick.
Only for a
I got it
small,
right here, I brought it just
amount
in
of
case.
time.
Come on.
Yeah, get to the end of it.
It's a lot, well, it's real simple. I mean,
But they're not gonna do it forever, I was told that also.
I know, but what I did is I got Caitlin on the phone because I got her original email.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go in here and try to decipher and determine what that
Right.
means. I said, Caitlin, I said, worst case scenario, let's say it takes, May, June, July, August, okay? For some reason.
I read your email.
I know, okay, I'm talking to you, but hopefully everybody's listening. Even if they came in for 4 months straight, the total cost would be $10,960, okay?
Public doesn't know what you're talking about. I'm kind of trying to catch up to you. What are we?
What we're doing is we're going to lose our payroll clerk on May the 16th. And so rather than go out trying to scramble to get somebody to replace, because the other, here's another thing that we as a council body are gonna have to discuss, and we've got to address it, and I guess we can address it when WIS comes in and makes their proposal. But, that payroll clerk position is a pay grade 8.
Yes, which is ridiculous.
And we've had a lot of turnover.
This will be the 6th one.
Is that what it is? And we can't afford that. We just can't afford it.
It's still grade 8 per year.
Yeah, well, it's 37,131.
Got it.
That's it. Now, keep in mind, and while we're on this, but I want you.
We're also changing the aspect of that.
We as a council body are going to have to address this issue. As contentious as it's gonna be, and it's gonna be a difficult subject, but it's gotta be addressed. FICA tax, $2,840. PERF, on a pay grade 8, the county pays out $4,158. So what that means is you've had 6 people come and go. And basically the county's paid out every year $4,158 to the state of Indiana, and perfect, we'll never see that money again. We just shoved it in a black hole. And those employees won't ever see it because they don't get it. And then we got $12,600 in group medicals. So a pay grade 8 is $56,729 total cost to the county. The problem with it is that pay grade 8 employee take 37,131 and back off 20% in taxes, less any other deduction. Yeah, they don't, all they're gonna look at is how much gets deposited in my checking account, 26 pays out of the year. And if you take a single parent household, I don't know how they do it.
They can't
I
do
have
it.
no idea how they do it. So, so the moral of the story is and I gave you guys this information the first of the year, and I've got it, I can read it off. But at the core, at the end of the year, we had 174 employees. We're losing half the employees, don't even make it 5 years. The turnover ratio in this county is terrible. And we have got to start talking about how in the world do we try to mitigate this attrition rate with our employees. I don't know. So, because there's no quick and easy answer for this story problem. So,
I'm on my 5th bookkeeper too.
I know. So so we need to bring in Reedy and let them come in and take over until Julie can hopefully find someone else and we can get them
That's
trained.
qualified.
Yeah.
So we're the commissioners and myself are changing that job description and adding HR back into it.
Oh, the employee benefits?
Part of HR into
Yeah,
it, yes.
good. Yeah, that's smart.
Say that again, Julie, what's that?
Yeah, that's good.
We're changing the payroll and putting the HR back with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you
Part
say-
of the
when you
payroll,
say
part of the HR back
When,
with it.
when somebody brings up HR in the context of Brown County, what I think of is basically payroll and employee benefits. Because they gotta understand the employee benefits, so when they do the new onboarding and the offboarding, right, they know how to do that transition. Because I don't think of it in terms of recruiting or trying to bring new people into the county, because that's the responsibility of the various department heads and elected officials, so, yeah. Well, that's a smart move, I'm glad to hear that. So that then, we should be able to, hopefully, we'll have to bump that pay grade up because of the additional responsibility.
Tim and I are working on it.
And so currently HR is in the commissioner's office, is that right, Commissioner Clark?
Correct.
And so that'll come out of your budget, go into the auditor's budget,
That's what we're looking at.
and then her budget will have to increase to incorporate that. Is that a full-time position in your office or part-time?
No,
So one full-time position coming out of the commissioner's going to auditor in the 26 budget, or is that this year?
No, we're just talking about it now.
Is this a good
We're
remedy?
looking about
Is this a good
outsourcing
remedy
the
for both
critical
offices?
HR related.
it is a very good remedy because basically HR and payroll work together hand in hand anyway.
Attorney fees. So it's a critical thing.
Seemed to work good.
Can
What
each
Reese
of you
was doing.
speak separately? I'm sorry, I cannot follow 3 conversations going on at the same time. I think you'll have important things to say, but I can't follow any
All
of
right, go
these
ahead,
now.
Ted.
Well, like I said, we're breaking it down and coming up with the options and coming up with
Okay.
numbers. So
Yeah, that's good to hear.
we'll have options.
All right.
We'll once we have it done.
Okay, so that's good. So we're covered with that.
So we
6.
don't have to vote or do anything on the WIS thing, or not, but the Reedy thing, do we? We just
I don't think
do
so.
it, right?
Yeah, and we'll just do it.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we put that on, I get, yeah, we don't have to take action on that, it's already been done.
All right, while we're on that, we can jump,
Part of their contract,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, we've already,
Yeah,
that's all.
yeah, the contract's all ended.
And as of right now, I mean, we've got the WIS study underway. I would almost say keep reading in the payroll position until we get.
They're not, Caitlin has already stated they are not going to stay in this position that long.
No, but Lori says do it that way
Yes.
until she gets done.
Yes.
So that is what she's being done. Lori says don't hire anybody at this point.
Until she's done with it.
Right.
Stunning.
Yeah,
She's
that's what
working
I was saying, I wasn't saying.
With me.
Right.
I wasn't saying
Right. You're saying
Caitlin in there permanently, I'm saying
That's
until
fine.
we
No, I know what
That's
you're
what's being
saying.
done.
a decision on the WIS
Okay.
study.
Well, when I talked to Caitlin, they're only going to be doing this a few months, so I'm going to have to actually
Well,
start.
they can't afford to do it for them. They're
Correct.
quoted at that, yeah.
I can't afford for them to do it continuously.
Yeah, so, all right.
But we need to have definitive pay, job description, all that stuff for
Gary?
payroll HR person. before we do
Yes,
that.
sir.
Julie,
Yes.
the community corrections, the,
Probation?
yeah, the health group medical insurance issue that
Oh, that
surfaced.
issue has come up with nationwide, yeah.
No, not,
For the grant paid employees?
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Yes.
right. Okay, do you remember that?
Yes,
Okay, do we want, I can address that now because I had a meeting with them yesterday.
do it.
You want to do that?
Are we making any kind of decision?
Well,
Because we can't make a
the
decision here.
Yeah, I mean, here's basically the agreement or the 3 of us, because it was Mary Wertz, and then it was Mallory, Rockwell, is that they were quoted for 2025, the administrative cost
Correct.
for SIHO. And because that's what they were quoted, we need to hold ourselves to that agreement, period. All right, so, they don't have a problem of covering the cost of what they were quoted based off the administrative cost for SIHO, right?
Right.
But 2026, and we're gonna have to sit down and have a conversation on this, based on their, which I did, we didn't get into the weeds on their revenue and disbursements on their budgets. But the challenge with it is that how we fund the 2 million for group medical currently,
Right.
for us to kind of cherry pick, if you will, a department that is funded completely by grant money and try to hand off the employer cost for group medical in that department, to have it paid by the state. I don't know that, in my opinion, you get into moral and ethical, if that's really a fair-minded approach, and we really need to discuss that, because the simple thing would do, going forward for 26, would be the county just covers the cost for the group medical for that area, period.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah, and that's kind of the census that the three of us, it would make it a lot easier. It's fair, it's equitable, right? Because we don't stuff your department, because it doesn't make any sense. It all comes out of the general fund anyway. So most of it, not all of it, but yeah. So anyway, that's an update. So if we could just honor the 2025 and then.
We need to vote on that at the meeting.
Pardon me?
We need to vote on that at the meeting.
Do we have to vote on that?
Yeah. I think so.
Okay, so then that needs to be on the
Agenda.
the agenda for the regular council meeting.
Just put it on there.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So essentially.
Okay, anything else on that?
Additional appropriation for them.
It's you. Anybody else have anything else on that?
Eventually, just like an additional
All right,
appropriation.
a lot, similar lines. Donald Luce is retiring or resigning.
Yeah.
So she was curious about, she's one of those perf people that we have hanging out there. And any thoughts on what we need to do? She would like to have it resolved before she leaves on about the 14th or 16th, somewhere in
There's
there.
nothing to resolve.
I know, so what do? We just don't do anything?
That issue is, we addressed that last fall.
We addressed the legality of what we were doing wrong last fall, but do we ever talk about finally just saying, what is our policy on making it good if there is anything to do there? What do we want to do? Just to say that, I'm sorry you don't get anything this year? Correct. So what the council wants to do.
Say it again.
Sorry you don't get anything this year anymore for future. We do not give you any 11.2% in any form whatsoever.
I'm with Jim, we beat that to death. And wait, let me finish. We've handled that like we handle everything. We just keep kicking it down the road. We've never put anything in writing what we're going to do to make them whole.
I agree.
So it just needs to be resolved. I mean, at some point, she's going to litigate this, and how much is that going to cost us? So I think we ought to just do something, make her whole, and be done with it.
We'll make her whole, but if we make her whole, there's 3 other people in the system still.
Okay, so you have to be fair and equitable, right?
Okay, what does that look like?
I don't know.
There you go.
There again, that's right, but we just keep passing it down the road.
Well, the other legal problem with that is if we pay her out, then we have violated the policy that we had.
Okay, so I understand.
Let me say,
Okay.
we have violated the policy that we have stated as a county with the 11.2% that goes to an employee retirement fund. Now we've taken that and offered it as cash to 5 people, 4 people, 5 people, whatever it is. And now we have the 168 other county employees who have a legal case to say, I want that 11.2% as cash.
And we've heard all that.
So
So what do we do? Just not pay her, let her sue, and then the courts will settle it?
Susan, what do you think?
I don't think she's going to be the only one.
I can share something.
Quick question. We haven't paid 11.2% in 2025 correct?
Correct.
That was a decision made in 2024. We were going to make them
Ended in
whole
2024.
and ended in 2024.
Right. It's over.
it's done.
Then it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she tries to sue. I don't know that she gets anybody to pick that up. That's a policy decision that you all made, that it's not happening moving forward. You pay one, you need to pay them all.
Right.
But so far, right now, you haven't paid that in 2025. You haven't given that, I'll put it in quotes, stipend,
Nope.
unless you take a vote and change that decision. That's the only way it's gonna get paid.
And if we pay that, then we open ourselves up to other
We're not gonna
litigation,
do
correct?
I think you reopened the can of worms that you put the lid on last year.
Exactly.
So it's all been
But you
resolved,
also
so paid
have
out,
the
I
issue
guess.
It's been resolved. It was resolved the day that we voted to terminate it. It's over.
And
Okay,
we,
it's wishful thinking on some people's, it was an option.
Discrimination.
And it's wishful thinking is what we've done, and we've never come down and said, no, that conversation is over. And that's the
Discrimination.
problem.
Do we need to have a vote?
Basically, they're
There's no-
discriminating against people that come back to work.
But they've
That's already retired.
activated a retirement plan that.
right,
we were
that's not a
paying for.
protected classification.
They cut themselves
It's-
out
But
of
we
it
see it
because of that.
differently. I don't see
I
it the
know,
same way
but
you do.
we have to see it one way, I mean.
I
Annuitized pension
don't
plan. It's
think
over.
they should be penalized from coming back to work.
Well, do that with Social Security. Taking your Social Security early and then go back to the federal government and say, oops, I'd like to move this up a couple. You know, there are things in life that work the way they work because they have to work that way because we open up too many variants. I mean, we established a policy, we made the decision, and
It's over.
we've got to stick with it.
All right.
And it's
No.
a tough decision.
You do what you gotta do.
It's a tough decision.
I got no say in it.
Conversation's over and there's nothing to discuss.
Do we need to vote on it or anything?
No?
No.
Done.
Yeah, it's just done.
All right,
Last fall.
that is the issue then.
All right.
Okay. We can take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Well, we can wait for them.
Gary, let's just push through, come on.
No, we're thinking.
It's not gonna be pretty.
No, these guys are going square here.
Jim needs to.
The decision will go to rest.
Let's do it. Come on.
Someplace else to work.
Oh, yeah.
I want
They would get it.
I mean, are you kidding?
If they offer it, but they don't get
I was an athlete, all
They get a
right?
max of 3%.
Still, we are a
Go back.
But they're drawing their pay. So they're getting 2 paychecks.
They're drawing their pay that they work for, like Sandy is retired, she
And
retired
that,
from.
it's the perf rules. I mean, that's,
She doesn't
that's
have
just
to get
it.
perf, I'm not saying perf, I'm just saying they should be still getting a retirement of some sort from here because they came back to work here.
I understand.
Meeting here, we've got a few things to cover, everybody's here. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the 8105 count sock factory money. That's a non-contentious subject.
Don't we have some mold remediation or something we can just blow that on and just get rid of it? I mean, you know, it's just sitting there. I mean,
Right. So where did it get, how did it get there, where does it go, and where's got authority is the question, I guess. So, anybody want to offer anything?
Gary, could I offer that that's a really broad question? Like, I
agree.
mean, how much time would you like to allocate for this discussion?
I don't know if we can solve it.
Can we do 5 minutes?
And can I ask, why is it on the agenda?
Because it was an item that came up, we can take it off, I'm okay.
Came up, how'd it come up?
What are we
Probably
talking
through you, the emails.
Imagine that.
I knew it. Yeah. Yeah, I'd rather table it.
I move we table it. I second.
Yeah, just table it.
All right, anybody else want to, you guys don't have anything?
Is there a quick update on it?
There's really nothing to discuss currently,
Okay,
so I don't think, you know.
it is tabled.
Is there a problem with it?
Well, I'm not gonna say.
Nope, if you asked that question, it's not tabled.
Just table it and move on.
Let's table it. Yeah, if there's a problem, let us know, but yeah.
No, we got enough problems, let's go with the original
Challenge. Can
EDC.
we substitute the word problem?
Challenge.
Challenge.
Yeah. Opportunity.
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Here we go.
Plenty of opportunity, we've got. County is full of opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, regional EDC, Monroe, Owen Brown.
So,
Scott.
yeah, we've had a chance to, as the innkeeper's tax has passed, and our tourism leaders have been meeting about this, we've talked about the idea of, as Pam mentioned this earlier, leveraging our funding to the maximum amount possible so that we can basically benefit the most, to our taxpayers. And so with the injection of what's roughly 20 million over 20 years in the innkeeper's tax, we could turn that 20 million into 30, 40 million plus by matching it with other private funds, grant funds, public funds, whatever, to accomplish, a lot more than we would have otherwise. This regional economic development district is Monroe, Owen Brown, and we've talked, this conversation started many months ago. It would offer us a new funding opportunity through the U.S. Department of Commerce. As soon as Jim has finished reading the 3,721 page document on that grant, we will be ready to move forward. I know it's been several months, we've been talking about this, but he's a slow reader, it's okay. But no, we do have an opportunity here to open ourselves up to significantly more funding for all the areas of need that we have. I mean, basically all the areas of need. And we've never had this opportunity before. And we've also got, for the first time ever, private, a matching pool of funds that could be used to match these grants so that we're not, depleting our existing county, rainy day fund or operational savings to meet critical needs and make investments. And so we're at a point where, if the innkeeper's tax is passed, and it has, at least the legislature, now the council needs to move it forward, where, we're in a really good position to take advantage of that regional economic development corporation. The tourism leaders, if I recall correctly, seem to really fully support the idea of having some planning through that. I mean, the first step of the economic development district is a significant in-depth study of our economic development demographics, all the data is going to come pouring out of your ears. You're going to be in heaven. And it's going to help us strategize these areas of economic development that we need to further develop. You've had prior study on that. But here's the difference. There's actual money behind this study. It's not just a study to study it, it's a study that leads to actual money. And so there's a difference. And I don't know why I'm looking at you, Jen, I'm just waiting for you to finish that, reading that. But I'm done with it. So that's it. I mean, I think there's an opportunity there. We do have interest, you know, we would need to come up with $20,000 as a county, and this isn't a county government project necessarily. We do have interest from some corporate partners in helping us provide funding to meet that match. I'm planning to ask the Commission and Visitors Commission at their next meeting for money to help us meet that match, to pursue the Economic Development District. And I don't know, Darren, you've been following kind of some of these conversations recently. You have any thoughts on what that district would, you know?
Can I say something?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip you.
Okay. I have the initial email, and I have my initial response.
From May last year, I think, if I
When
remember
Melissa
right.
Stetson sent the
May
email.
last year.
I remember
Yeah,
that.
it's been a
This subject-
very quick process.
Well,
Yeah,
wait a minute, okay?
we're at a year now, actually, since the first kind of talking about it.
All right.
A year.
And I think, keep in mind, I can be open-minded, I'm open-minded, I'm not closed-minded, right? But for, you know, because if I remember correctly, there is an individual that is the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Owen County that's driving this narrative.
Marcy King, she's come to our meeting.
She's driving the narrative.
Yes.
No, she's not driving the narrative, she's helping us move forward as a region.
And then you have, well, and then you've got Monroe County.
Yeah.
All right. So right out of the gate, you know, the very first thing I would want to do is I would want to look at that operating agreement. I would want to look at the Constitution. I'd want to look at the bylaws, you know, and I'd want to know, you know, what's the, you know, the administration of this thing? What's the cost of this, you know, this joint venture? Because it's essentially a joint venture between Brown, Monroe, and Owen County is what it is. Right? So I would have to I would want to read the operating agreement of, you know, how it's going to be staffed, how's it going to be funded, who are the decision makers, number one. Number two.
What does it obligate us to?
Yeah.
Well, see, my concern is I don't want Brown County to give up its autonomy. Did I pronounce that word right? I think I'm with that word. I don't want us to give up our autonomy. I don't want, and I don't want us to find ourselves in a position to where you basically got Bloomington driving the narrative, okay? Because clearly it's going to be Bloomington because they've got deep pockets over there, far more than we do, number one. So that's a concern. And then the second concern I have, and I don't really, you know, I'm consciously incompetent on this one. It's my understanding when you start playing around with federal grant money, okay?
A lot of strings.
Because to me, this last 28 months experience as a private sector guy, no experience, you know, when I think of grants, to me, I think of, you know, basically, you know, it's nothing more than legalized bribery. And we'll give you this money, but you do this, this, and this. It's all it is, right? And because you can control through grant money and change cultures, you can change all sorts of things because everybody's looking to try to get free money. So that's what it is. And what scares me is depending on what administration's in place, and federal grant money is what's the fine print in those grants. What do we give up? Do we give up? I mean, I have heard, I don't know if this is true, so this is very subjective and anecdotal on my end, but I think I have been told that, you know, historically, there have been federal grants to where communities basically relinquish their ability for zoning to be able to control any of their zoning within their communities.
Who told you that?
I'm not gonna go into that, that's just, that's
I think
a
they-
concern.
that's-
It's a
That's
historical,
completely- that's a
it's a
concern, so-
historical fact that this has happened.
Yeah, so well, because, I mean,
That's insane.
no, it's not insane, Scott, because
They would take our
if you,
zoning away?
Scott,
They
if you look,
override it, yes, there are
if we
mandates.
frame this conversation in the context of water, okay, because if you go out west, I mean, they got a serious issue with fresh water. And if you go forward in the next 30 years, fresh water is gonna be a challenge globally. And number two, if you frame it in the context of climate change, okay, then clearly the method MO going forward over the next 100 years is you want high density population, and you want to get rid of this rural living, okay? So you take the peeps, you force them out, you force them in, and you put them in buildings, okay? Now, don't laugh, that it's real.
15-minute cities. They're called 15-minute cities.
That's an actual point.
That's an actual, I don't, what I don't know is I don't want us to run the risk of
Have you
giving
seen the
up
plans
our
for this?
autonomy.
It's written.
So, before we go making any decisions and moving down based on emotion, and let's get together and it's kumbaya, and, you know, let's jump in, I call it jumping in bed with Monroe and Owen County, before we start doing that, we better make sure we've asked all the questions, we've fleshed everything out, and we understand what we're getting ourselves into before we ever make that decision.
I got your two concerns. So last year in May, when I brought this up, you said pretty much the exact same thing.
I know, and
I would
I'm
need
gonna
to
hold-
read.
I
this
want to
as you said the
see-
exact
yeah,
same,
because
because that was a year ago.
Yeah, so, because I've never seen anything in writing, Scott.
I haven't either.
You've never seen anything. in
I'm
writing.
not, where's the document, where's the agreement, Scott?
Yeah.
No, Scott, I want it in writing, show me the contract, show me, Scott, this is the subjective anecdotal stuff. I don't make
So-
decisions
so if
based
you're
on
serious-
suggestive
serious-
anecdotal stuff.
If you're serious, you actually want to read
Yeah, real simple.
the information.
I want to see,
It's not simple.
what's the
It's not
agreement?
simple.
Then that's
It's a
why we
federal
need to
program.
read it. That's why we need to read it.
I think the issue is he
Don't
wants
get
to
me wrong, I'm
know
not saying
what
you
we're
should read
committing
it.
to.
It's like,
But, you know.
it's like the people on TV that want to sell you a warranty on your car. You better read the contract, okay?
Okay, so you haven't read it in the past.
No, I have no idea. I've never seen it, never given the
No, that's what it
opportunity.
is. Look it up.
Where is the agreement between, what's the document? What's the agreement? What would we actually be signing?
So.
What are we
so
signing?
You're way off course here, Jim.
No,
I'm just
I'm
gonna
not.
tell
No, I'm
you,
not.
you're way off course.
I think he's
What am I
right.
supposed to make
No,
my
the
decision
problem
based on?
is,
What
no,
do I
the
make-
problem is, we need to.
you keep saying we need to.
Get serious about this.
About,
If you
serious
wanna
about
read-
what? Serious about
You
what,
want
Scott?
to hear.
Yeah, but get clear.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. If this is something that the council thinks is important, if you don't want to go after matching funds and.
First of all, don't do that, because we're having a discussion and bringing up
Well,
questions. Don't
I
say
mean-
we don't want to do this. You throw.
No,
then you're
that's not what I'm
throwing
saying.
arrows back
That's
at
not what
us
I'm saying.
Okay,
Jim
you don't want to do it
doesn't
my way,
represent
then you don't want to do it.
No, Jim doesn't represent the council, it's the council's decision.
I'm right on board with him.
So if you think zoning
I-
will be pulled from the
I have
county.
mentioned every one of those
That's
concerns.
absurd, guys.
Can I make a statement?
Okay, go ahead.
I brought up every one of the same concerns that Jim has brought up. If we sell our soul to the federal government for grants,
Yeah.
we sell our soul and we potentially federalize more of Brown County than is already federalized.
That's the
I'm not
concern.
saying no.
That's the
You're
concern.
shaking your head like I'm saying, like
I'm
you're saying
just-
no.
I'm just
How
trying to-
can I?
He wants to make, they
Finish?
want to make sure that that's not going to happen.
I want the written.
I can't
detailed
guarantee you
agreement
that the world is not flat either.
No.
I mean, okay, you know, I mean.
Well, let's look at this. They had the
It's
Project
just not even close
46.
to the
They had the
ballpark.
Project 46 that came down. Remember that?
Yeah.
They wanted everybody to take 50 cents out of every taxpayer and pay for this. Well, for Blooming, I'm just an example, for Monroe and Bartholomew and us in between. But the problem is a blanket solution doesn't help, because it's like, okay, you want to save the environment, but the fact is they should be paying us money. We got all the trees. We're saving the environment. It's, you can't do a blanket thing. These are the kind of discussions, decisions we need to look at, is what's in there. And it's like, that's our concern. It's just a matter of concern for what opportunity, it's a SWOT analysis. What's
And the
what's
Project
gonna be.
40,
so
the
who wants to do
project,
that?
hold on, the Project 46 thing is a perfect example, because hidden in those details were restrictions and limitations on us as a county and our sovereignty.
Yeah, it's a totally different issue.
Well, we
What
don't know
funding-
that. We don't know that until it's written is the problem.
Where was that
We can
funding
see it.
source from on the Road 46?
Funding source? It's
Yeah.
supposed to come from the
Same funding
taxpayer.
source?
I don't know.
I mean, we could throw
We-
crazy ideas,
But
crazy
all it is
examples
is
out all day long.
verbal
guys.
now. We need
That's not what's happening.
something in writing to see what are we getting into? What are the implications? Due diligence, we've got to apply ourselves to that.
Okay, the first round of information was provided, we had a presenter come, and so we want follow-up information.
I want
Would you,
detailed
okay,
information.
tell me what it is that you want to see. I mean, this is all available online, you've got links to the whole thing online, right?
That's not what we're signing. I'm saying the exact, I want a written, printed, full.
You want to print it, okay?
We're not.
Black and white,
Yes,
okay, black and white.
the details of the agreement that we're going to agree to, all the consequences, all the benefits, all the requirements.
Okay,
That's what I want, the agreement, the
And-
detailed agreement that we're agreeing to.
and that's a motion that the council review that?
Well,
That's
Scott, what
that's
is
a
there?
request,
Scott,
that's just a request, before
Scott,
I
what are
sign
you
it
trying
and
to
agree to
accomplish
it.
here today with
I
this?
want the agreement, the full agreement printed,
Okay.
so I can read it.
So
See the
you want the
details.
agreement
And
that
Jim-
would move
Jim
it
does too.
forward,
He's- that's
and
exactly what
I'm
Jim
just trying to narrow down where, because
Scott,
we've
what's
been a
your
year on
intent?
this.
What's your
guys.
intent?
We've been a year.
What's your intent?
We have a new opportunity with the new matching funding source for the innkeeper's tax, as I just explained, and we could double, triple this money if what I queued up for you at the council's request, look at new revenue opportunities for the past year. Okay,
So-
so work at this, Jim. Let me finish. You asked me to look at new revenue.
What's your
opportunities.
intent?
Jim, let him,
I'm talking about the EDC.
that's what he's getting at, let him say it.
EDC is a new revenue opportunity.
So that's your intent.
I will, along with Scott, I will agree with that. It is a potential opportunity to be a regional entity that can receive funds. That's nice. Question is, what's tied to it? That's what we're all asking for.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Monroe County, you know, and it's funny because in our regional, you know, conversations about this, Owen and Brown, you know, me and the Owen Marcy have said, you know, gosh, we don't want Monroe County to control all these funds. We don't want to be led by, you know, Monroe County's, I mean, we are different than Monroe County.
Yeah, right.
Owen County is different than Monroe County. Monroe County is different from us. And the beauty of this district is that we make our own individual county plan, okay? We have our own individual county people, and we make our own individual county grant requests that have zero influence or impact on any other county but ours, okay? Now, as far as the absolute, these wild stories about planning and zoning being ripped out of the county and, you know, we'll lose that white, I mean, I don't think that's happening here. I don't have any examples of crazy pressure being put on counties to, from this group to do economic development.
So now can I language
I
it back
don't-
to you?
I just don't have any.
Can I language what I just heard
Those
back
are
to you?
anecdotal.
To make sure I understand
Contract.
what I just heard?
Yeah.
Okay. What you're advocating for is if we sign an operating agreement between,
Not even close to that yet, but, you know.
there's got to be some sort of an operating agreement, I'm going to call it an operating agreement for lack of a better term, between Bloomington, Owen, and Brown, that it has the potential for the three counties to go to, you know, there's 15 different federal departments, and be able to solicit a specific department to go after solicit federal grant money.
Department of Commerce, I think.
Is that what it is? Okay, so we get the Department of Commerce.
It establishes us.
That we
as a
could
defined
give us
economic development.
access to grants that we may not otherwise ever have access to.
Roads,
Okay, that is a good idea. That is a really good idea.
economic development.
That is it.
Line.
Okay, you can stop. That is,
Things we need.
that's a good idea. So I don't have a problem with that. That's.
Oh, I hope not.
No, I don't have a problem with that.
Because it's taxpayer relief. is what
I
it
mean,
is.
I don't have a problem with that, okay? An issue is if we still don't give up our autonomy and we were able to act and behave independently, right? But we have an interdependent agreement with Bloomington, with Monroe and Owen County, that's fine. Let's get it in writing and let's see what it says and let's look at the agreement because there's got to be an agreement, all right?
and there's got to be an organizational structure to it.
Yeah.
Okay, and, you know, there's a lot of information that I don't have, and then clearly I'm going to want to read the document, you know, and that document, I'm probably going to have to read a number of times to make sure I comprehend the document correctly. And then there's probably going to be language in there where I'm going to want Susan Beavers to look at the document to make sure that our interpretation of the document, that we're comprehending it correctly.
Typical standard
That's
procedure.
due diligence stuff.
Standard procedure.
So if, you know, if we can move in that direction,
That's standard procedure.
if we can move in that direction, again, having stuff, you know, in writing, documented to actually what we're gonna sign and what we're, you know, what we're signing up for. And if all it is just trying to, you know, put the 3 counties together so we get access to federal grant money that we may not likewise have access to, then I don't have a problem with that.
That's what it is.
Okay. If it's that simple.
Okay, Darren, did you have something?
I'm just,
Yeah.
Jim summarized.
That's good.
my-
Yeah, we're for it with protecting ourselves. Trust but
that's all.
verify.
All right, let's go to the next one.
So whatever's next one.
So are you heading that whole thing up then? Is that what you're?
Unfortunately, damn, it's going nowhere and it's snail's pace and, you know, I'm glad I'm able to help you.
Hey, I sent him an email to Melissa Stinson, had to give me the thing right up front.
Yeah, you got it, here we go. So I'll go back to work.
I've been online, I've looked at the whole
I'll
EDC thing.
resend you all the information and then I will follow up to make sure you read it for our next meeting.
So, yeah,
Okay,
Bartholomew County clearly going to get involved in it, so.
yeah, they got Jackson County.
Technically, we've covered everything on the agenda.
I move we adjourn.
I think we need,
Go ahead. We need what?
we got a lot of details to work out on this innkeeper's tax thing.
If anybody here,
I mean,
has got anything to say.
these meetings are supposed to be effective work session meetings, and all we're doing is bringing up points and saying, okay, this is what we talk about at the next meeting. Okay, we don't talk about it at the next meeting either, we just bring it up and say that we, okay, we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
I agree.
Okay, what are some of the details that we
The
need to work out?
innkeeper's tax would be a good thing to flesh
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, Mr. President, which of these items would you like to put on the next meeting for a decision? To Darren's point, you're saying we should move these things forward, right?
No, I want
No, he's
decisions made this
He
meeting.
wants to.
Well, we agreed we wouldn't do that. Susan, we're.
Yeah, we're-
Well, not
Yeah.
decisions, but
We don't know what moving forward looks like. We have to define what moving forward looks like.
we haven't defined it.
On which item?
The innkeeper's tax for one, big one.
Yeah, it just happened
So-
last week.
I know.
That's what he's saying. We got time, let's
You want
define it.
it, you want it passed, so we start collecting in July 1st. We got,
That's when we can collect it.
we got a lot of details to work out before that.
All right.
Before I agree to do that. And
All
we've
right.
got an opportunity right now at this meeting. The intent of these meetings is to work out those details.
Let's do it.
So we're
We
just
have
gonna
some
adjourn.
time, let's give it to the innkeeper's tax. What does that look like? Let's flesh it out. Part of it, it sounds like two components are managing change to maintain quality of life. That's the direction it may
So do
go.
we want to take the next 40 minutes and tackle this innkeeper's tax thing real quick?
Sure.
Why not?
Okay, can I have- will you allow me to facilitate it real quick?
This
Julie,
meeting is scheduled till noon.
does anybody have the ability over there to pull up Gateway on this
We can
system?
talk about it. Why?
How do we get, all I need, I want to see, you know, let's see that line item for the innkeeper's tax for 24, 23, and 22. What was the rest of that? Let's start there.
I don't have my computer here to,
Can we,
I'll try it, but the
You know how to go to Gateway and pull that out?
Yeah, on a lot.
he's got it.
yeah, go on
Awesome.
Gateway, those cash investments going into the thing.
Here, you want to plug in? I'll plug you in over here.
Yeah, sit down over here. Just grab a chair.
Yeah,
Let's
chair.
do this real quick. Because I don't think I can take that long.
We got it.
Facilitate it real quick.
There you go.
Here you go, I don't have an HDMI port. Yeah, here.
Here, is this big? Do you have this?
So, to start this
No,
conversation, it
mine's
may
really old.
stop the conversation, I don't know. The part of your statute that did not change is 6914.3, right? The powers of the commission. Part of the powers of the commission are after its approval of a proposal, transfer money quarterly or less frequently from the fund to any nonprofit corporation for the purpose of promotion and encouragement in the county of convention and visitation development.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to stay, that did not change, right? So you have to stay within those parameters of your use of the funds.
So put that language.
Yeah, I mean, number one.
CDC has control over all the allocation.
Well,
of
the commission proposes the budget,
To the
right?
council.
So the
CDC.
commission, yes. But the dollars go to a nonprofit,
It has to.
right?
be part of the-
Not a for-profit
Yeah,
developer,
okay,
right?
right.
For the purposes of convention and visitation development.
So that language has stayed the same.
It
And
has,
there's, and
So-
tourism, isn't there and tourism something in that language?
nope,
Thought it was.
Did any,
That's in the-
Convention and
uniform
visitation
package,
development.
But not, no, we have.
you have your own.
It was weird in that last bill that passed, it read, and I don't know if you saw the legislation.
Field report search.
It said under
I got
the
it.
uniform.
Okay.
Well, it was, maybe it's just semantics. It said.
Well, last year it was
under the uniform.
1.384 million, 2023,
How much was it?
1.38.
1.384 million was collected.
2024 was how much?
1.384 million.
1384,
2023 was 1.27 million.
1.27 million. Got it.
And the 2022 is not available online for
Wow.
whatever reason.
Yeah, 11 years, it goes back to 2022.
I pulled it up and it was blank.
So where do you want to go, Jim?
All right, well,
Yeah, 'cause
this,
it's moving.
all right, well, this is real simple. So we'll just take these two, we got 2 years, fine. 1270, 127. 27. 3. We got 1, 2, 8, 4, 1, 3. So 2,264,000 is the last 2 years, right? Divided by 2, so the average is 1,327,000, right? And if I hit that times 1.38, then that means that we, going forward a full calendar year, it would be 1,831,000, 260, and take that minus 1,327, 123. 0.831,260 minus 1,327,3. It's, we're talking about 500 grand. It's $504,260 additional revenue based off the last 2 years. Okay,
Per year.
yeah, per year. That's what you're talking about.
I'm looking for FSG's
So,
estimate.
okay, well, I don't care what Greg.
And then
costs.
the
I don't
fiscal
care.
had it very different.
I got, all I've done, it's real simple math. It's, here's 22, here's 23, here's 24, right? Here's 23, 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just averaged the two, right? Hit it at 1.4%, right? And it's 140%. You can take 140% increase, So, because if I take, and how do I arrive at, well, if I take 3% increase divided by 8, right? 3% increase divided by 8, that's 38%, right, Jimmy? Because you were smart, originally you come up and go, you guys are talking about bumping that 60%, because you took.
No, it was 60%, because you have to,
No, but he
you
took-
have to divide 3 by 5, because that's the
No, no, no.
percentage increase.
No, right, because it was a 60% increase, he's correct.
Yes,
Right, but that doesn't mean that's a 60% increase in revenue.
yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Right?
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. It's
It's
only
going from 5% to 8%.
Yeah,
So
we wanna
the
revisit
3% increase is 60% of the current
Okay,
5%.
we're going from 5% to 8%,
Right.
correct? So if I take 3%
Now, hold on,
divided by
don't do
8,
that
that's
yet.
38%.
No, that's 30% for the future revenue.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm trying to solve for.
That's not going to get you the number. The number is, at 5%, we're bringing in, I'll round it down to 125,000.
Okay, if I take, yeah.
Wait, where you have got.
1.25 million.
When you go into the annual reports.
You're doing about $26,540,000 a year in gross sales.
Times .03.
Times .03
much more money
is $796.
Exactly.
Okay, my mistake.
Which, the simple math,
Thank you.
which says.
All right, all right. So now we got 800 grand.
At 5%,
There you go.
1.25
All
million
right,
each
so-
percent.
So as long as we get that, good. All right, so now we got 800,000 with that, right? 800,000. Well, we do need to just write. I told you that on the phone.
I got it writing twice already from two different sources.
You didn't, why didn't you give it to me?
Yeah, well,
You
you didn't raise
Why do I have to do it?
You didn't raise
So 800 grand. So now we got an additional 800,000. Jimmy, you agree with that? You're the math.
I haven't heard anything you said. I was.
You were.
Wow, here's
All
a
we-
wiser.
And you got something, here's what we did, just to make sure we did the math right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we did. Is if you take
you know, the last 2 years with the 5% increase tax, right? All right, and we take the average, which was $1,327,000, divide that by 0.05, that gives you the total gross revenue for the year.
Why would you divide that by 0.05?
Because the 5% is the tax. So in other words, we collected 5% off the gross rental income.
No, 1.3 is, well, 5%.
Oh, yeah, the
So you're
money
trying to
coming
solve
in
for what's
is
the gross
tax.
rental
No, I know, but what I'm trying to arrive at is all I want, what we're doing is we're taking 1,327, 123, divide that by 0.05, that's $26,540,000 of gross revenue.
Got it, but not for the county, but for,
The whole
yes,
thing.
okay.
So if the average is 26.5 million gross revenue per year, you hit that at 3%, which is the new increase, then that's going to generate $800,000 of additional revenue.
That would make sense.
You good with math?
But, yes, if your data, if your inputs are accurate, then
I'm
yes.
just walking you through because you're a math guy.
Go ahead, just
Just to make sure we keep everybody honest.
Yeah.
Including myself. Okay, so we have, so we have an additional $800,000 of the revenue. Now, let's segue back to you. Do they have the ability to differentiate and make decisions on how, who has the ability to make decisions on how that additional revenue is allocated?
Yeah, the commission presents a budget to the
Okay.
council, and the
So
council
it's the CDC board.
approves a
No,
budget.
it's the council.
The council approves the budget.
But that wasn't my question. The question is who, the CDC can make a decision how they're going to allocate those resources.
Based on our approval. If we say no, they don't get to.
Well, then what happens if the council says no?
It accumulates in the fund.
Gross.
They
Oh,
get,
so the hammer the council has is say, well, you can propose that, but we're not gonna do it.
we're not gonna do it.
Okay, so it is you as the council and the group, the private sector need to put their heads together and make a decision on how they want to allocate the money. And then the CDC board, because you're on the board, has, then you guys will honor the agreement, the verbal agreement, and structure the budget according to the agreement.
That's why the details of this are so important, because
And I'm assuming the 5-member board are willing to honor the gentleman's agreement, or gentlemen, gentle person agreement.
No, this has to be more than a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah,
This has to be
right,
important. This has to be binding.
Yeah.
Well, it goes into the budget. They do the budget, according to Susan.
And they do a budget, present it to you, you approve the budget, and then they allocate the funds.
Right,
as they see fit.
and our hammer is if we don't like what you're doing, then we don't approve it.
Right, which is why the details of this are so important.
Yeah,
and we
that's
can't
fair.
Rush it to get it.
No,
done.
we don't need to rush it. Yeah, okay. And your board and everybody's all in agreement and we work together to do this collaboratively. We're always in agreement.
And we're not, here's the thing going forward. We're not doing anything with the 5% they already collect.
No,
That's already in there.
you got an extra $800,000 a year.
That's been passed by council.
Have fun, guys. Go figure out what you want to do.
What we're doing now
I don't
is
care,
there's
you're just gonna do it.
additional.
All right.
No,
So now you're gonna do this. You guys are gonna get together, you're gonna make some decisions and figure out how you're gonna allocate the $800,000.
No, we
Well, no, I think
are
the,
going to come up with these.
the intent is
We-
to alleviate some of your general fund.
And the
That's the
CDC.
whole, that's, you guys
All
gotta do
right, here's,
that.
here's some things that have been
Yeah, but how did
discussed.
you guys
I want to pick up like the Pioneer Village.
We're ongoing talking about that.
All right,
These are
let-
details need to be worked out.
Yeah, we've,
There's
some
no
things,
decision making.
some things on the table are they can't do the emergency services, which is what our additional intent was.
Right.
Hold on that, I meant to say this earlier, but I didn't get a chance, which also goes to the mental health thing you were talking about. If we can't tie public safety to innkeeper's tax, creating a safe place for tourists, we sure as hell can't roll we cannot twist any kind of mental health thing.
Well, if you're talking about tourism workforce.
We can't, public safety is a direct contribution to tourism.
It's just
The
something.
mental health.
They don't accept that.
Anyway,
Okay.
yeah.
So the things that have been discussed are things like the Pioneer Village, they can possibly take it off our budget. Parks and Rec, they can possibly take off our budget, where we then have money to put.
Yeah, frees up the stress on the general fund.
Correct. So those are things that this can happen. They also seem to have a value on an EDC, or a Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce hasn't passed much, but the EDC seems to have value. So,
And before we agree to fund a Chamber of Commerce, there's going to be a lot of concrete, definite.
well, I think they're going EDC.
There's any interest in that.
Nobody wants to do
Did you guys discuss terminating the redevelopment commission and flipping it back to an EDC?
No,
Not yet.
different boards. It's not the same, that's not gonna happen.
Well, that has been mentioned by somebody, I can't remember.
It's
It
not,
has, and
it's
it ought to
not.
be, that ought to
That's
be
off the
pristine.
table.
That ought to be looked at.
Why would you look at that?
We don't have to get into that right now, because it's really down in the weeds. So let's-
Yeah, I don't, I
All
think.
right, so anyways, so they're trying to lose some things to alleviate our budget. They can possibly pick up the fairgrounds and things of that nature
Okay,
too.
cool. Well, yeah, but you guys got a committee, you guys are working on this now, right?
No, it's
Yes.
not.
So all you guys gotta do is put your heads together and work on
It's
it.
an informal group.
Informal group and put it together, put it in writing and propose it to the council and, you know, it shouldn't be an issue. As long as we're rational and objective.
Oh, boy, that's where we run into problems. No, hey, take the 800,000 as a financial advisor, over 20 years at a 3% growth, how much money is that?
I don't care about that.
Total
That's
bucket
that's
money.
projection. I mean,
That's what we're about to decide where it all goes. We
Well,
got-
no, this, first of all, these decisions can be changed
They can.
from one year to the
But we need
next.
to know how much we're dealing with, and it's 20 million.
So you-
Spoiler alert, but go ahead.
So you want 800 grand, right?
It's over 20 million now, 800, but.
At a 3% annual rate, right?
Yeah.
20 years. $21,496,299.59.
Got an
See,
extra
I don't care about
month
that number, that's a BS number, that's all projected out 20 years.
Nah, but if we can't grow 3% over 20 years, well, we're
All
pouring
right,
20
so,
million.
hey, okay, let's stay on target here, let's stay focused. So you guys got 800 grand, I'm assuming your little committee, we got to put together some ideas, flush it out, come up with a proposal. What was the proposal? It's rational, objective, and everybody, you know, fine. And then, so now let's say you get that done. When, how long is it gonna take you all to do that?
You keep saying y'all.
I know.
I'm not gonna be
It's not
involved in
us.
that conversation, I'm not gonna.
You're on council. You're.
Okay, but you guys have
are
already
involved.
got
No.
the private sector and everybody involved.
Dollars.
We're
We
not
have to be
making a
involved.
decision in that group. That's information gathering. I'm not gonna let that group make the decision.
They can't.
We are all
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah, but hang
group
on a
to
minute, you
make
got a
the
5-member
decisions.
board that has to agree with it too, and you guys don't have to agree with it. Now you're at a
You're
deadline.
talking about CBC?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the
so the
CBC.
5-member board, if we're gonna do this, the 5-member board, if we do this, then you ought to have the council members and the 5-member board, and then we probably ought to hire, maybe Susan can come in, we'll pay her to facilitate the conversation.
Yeah, that's yet to come.
Yes, sir.
It's my understanding that the CBC is supposed to present a budget recommendation to you for approval in June
Yes.
for next year.
There's July,
Yeah, during our
Is it
budget.
July?
July's the deadline, right?
Okay, Kevin All told me June, but he
Well, that's a good deadline for you guys.
Yeah, it probably
Yeah.
is. Anyway, and I agree with everything you're saying. That's my understanding is that the CBC puts together this budget
Right.
and submits it to the council for approval.
Right.
And what I don't know is that then an up or down, or can you negotiate on the budget?
Well, I think we
Yes,
ought to
to all- yes,
negotiate
to
on
all
the
of the
budget.
above.
We should negotiate the budget on the front end, not on the back end. So in other words, when you bring your budget in, we've already agreed to it, and we just approve it. And that's what you're saying. You're saying, that's what you're at, hang on, I'm just trying to facilitate this conversation.
Arrange for the work session.
Okay, is you're advocating that we get this new revenue source of 800,000, and you're advocating that the council makes the decision of how that revenue is going to be allocated going forward, correct?
That's the
With the CBC,
Board.
yeah, and other interest, there's a lot of interest in this.
Okay, well, how do we do that?
That's what we're facilitating right
When do
now.
we want to have that done by? What's a realistic deadline?
Which part of it?
This negotiating process.
Well, a question, I guess, for the informal meetings that we've been having, all that information should be public. I mean, I've assumed it all is public. I mean, it's,
Yeah, we published the minutes.
if anybody wants to sit in on that meeting or observe that meeting, we have
I
a way
haven't
for
published
people to
any of the other,
observe.
I haven't published any of the minutes for it because we haven't had any quorums of any
Right,
boards yet.
yeah, there's no forums, it's just, it's an informal discussion, nobody's making a decision based on that.
Have you developed consensus?
Yes.
We're trying
Sort
to
of.
figure out where the opportunities are and what people are interested in.
But I think the big hurdle is what kind of language are you on the council looking for in order to move this forward?
So here's,
I mean, that would be my
Let me go
number
into
one
that. I
question.
think it's important. You know, Jim just did the calculation at 3% growth, which seems pretty conservative to me annually, at 21.4 million over 20 years. I think our, you know, at least from the county department perspective, Parks and Rec, Pioneer Village, County Fairgrounds, Salt Creek Trail, Covered Bridge, should have a 20-year investment plan up front for all their needs over 20 years, including whatever portion of 21.4 they would need for sustainability of the historic sites
I see what
and
you're
capital
saying.
investments, maintenance, whatever it is they need over that period of time.
Scott,
Let's secure it up front.
Scott,
Yeah.
I think what I just think I heard you say is identify the recipients of the funding.
We know those county recipients are there, and there are many, many
Well, I
others,
understand, but I
right?
just,
Yeah.
big picture. And so so let's say you got 6. What's the annual cost? What's their annual cost over a 20-year period?
And they should assume a 3%.
Yeah, and what you're after is, can we do this going into it and making sure that it's sustainable over a 20-year period? That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about sustainability. Gotcha. Okay. See what he's doing? Yeah.
And that's part of these.
You're looking at cash flows, and making sure that this revenue comes in, you got these sources, what are their needs gonna be, and can we continue to fund them?
So
And that's-
part of that-
and that's
20-year
part of
period.
the
So if you
agreement.
take on Parks and Rec, what's, yeah, right.
But part of that sustainability is, you know, when we put capital investments into, and that can be separate, right? We've got kind of some, I don't want to call them operational tourism investments, but they're the things that will be in the county's budget that are current tourism, right? And so, and then there's, just thinking of this broadly, as a separate bucket of capital investments that'll be broad all over the county. And that capital investment has a maintenance requirement living beyond its.
Right.
And, you know, we've said for a long time, we have got to start planning when we put air conditioners on the jail to replace the air conditioners in 20 years.
And examples like Parks and Rec, they want lighting.
Yeah, we've got to replace it.
They want new.
By the way, I saw that lighting at my son's baseball game for the first time 2 nights ago. It's worse than I thought. And it was bad to begin with. I mean, so anyway, things like that will require and so.
Give the kids carrots.
So can you guys, so let's go back to the other questions. So you got your group, and then you guys need to like hash all that out,
We
right?
need to develop the framework first.
Yeah.
So let's use it, let's talk real quick, because I know Jim said 40 minutes, but of course we're pushing.
And
up
keep in
against-
mind, what I'm trying to solve for right now is just set some artificial deadlines.
Yes.
Now, keep in mind, if we set some artificial deadlines, you can always adjust those deadlines, right? But at least we have a target, then we can work on trying to hit that
Let me
target.
take over from here.
Go for it.
Susan,
So,
in terms of, let's just call it a July 1 deadline we set for ourselves, kind of a stretch goal. What would the meeting requirements be to pass the tax? And this is something, if you could just get it to us. Meeting requirements, posting deadlines, numbers of meetings, and kind of back us back from July 1 and say, if we made a decision in our June meeting, we would need to start the process here for advertising, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I mean, again, we go back to kind of what was our plan for this year, and it is not to necessarily have 2 readings at the same meeting. If we don't have to, this would be one of those things where we shouldn't have it at the same meeting.
I agree.
So your first reading would have to be in May, your second reading would have to be in June to tweak your percentage. Understand that. right? That's all you're doing right now, and that's all that they need to know right now. And when is that effective date? What's your percentage that you're changing, and what is that effective date, right? That's what innkeepers need to know. After that, the budget that comes from CVC should just be their budget that they've had forever, right? It doesn't include this additional funds yet. You know why? Because you can do an additional appropriation next year once you have funds available, if you have a project that meets the criteria of going to a nonprofit that's for convention and visitation development. Several of the things that you identified off of here are county-owned properties. The only one that's not is the EDC, right, which should be its own nonprofit, right? Whether that's a regional EDC or just a Brown County EDC, I don't know the answer to that yet. But, right, you're talking about county-owned properties there that you're looking to, hey, can this come off of our plate, right? And so you meet that criteria of nonprofit, your government.
Are we nonprofit, you think? I wasn't assuming that.
Do you?
We don't pay federal income tax.
Right, I mean, like, is that a real question? That's a real question?
That was frightening, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're not. I mean, you fall under that category of nonprofit if it's a governmental entity.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, nobody here gets money just because you're a shareholder of the county.
Yeah, we're not problem.
Right.
So the question that I know has come up is what legally can we allocate the money for? Can the CVC allocate the money for? And that's our question as this informal group goes on, right?
Yeah, convention and visitation
We've been dying
development.
to ask Susan this question the whole time.
So I missed the question. Sorry, I'm still reeling from the weird.
Ask the question.
Yeah, I'm a little bit reeling too.
Yeah.
So can you use innkeeper's tax money for housing development and wastewater for housing development for our tourism industry?
Convention and visitation development.
So yes.
Is that what it is?
It seems pretty broad.
It's broad and open to interpretation.
It's broad and open to interpretation.
If you don't have employees, you can't have a tourism economy. You don't
You gotta
have.
go to the bathroom somewhere.
It's true.
They can't live here and work here. It's kind of hurts the tourism economy. I mean, it's kind of like public safety, but that one didn't work. So
You're
this
probably
was
saying,
like,
I think that's the most direct
Obvious. I mean,
benefit,
it's totally
obvious
obvious.
one to,
Yeah.
that if you do not have a safe place for tourists to go,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have a tourist industry.
So government is a nonprofit.
I mean, it's not a 501c3 or under the 501 code of the IRS. I mean, that's where all your nonprofits are housed, but
Can I clear
you're,
this up?
yeah.
Scott, and this is a general, all nonprofit means, and there's a number of different nonprofits. So, the one that's the best would be the 501c3, which simply makes the donations tax deductible, right? But the key issue with the not-for-profit is they don't pay any federal income tax.
We do.
No, we don't.
Well, on our employees.
Yeah, the employees pay it, but if the county is an entity, county government is a separate entity, because it's a legal, well, actually, it's the commissioner's office is the legal entity that holds property rights for all the assets. So that's the issue, so it's, because
Yeah,
they're
I've just never heard of government referred to as a nonprofit, but
Well,
it's.
technically, we're not,
You know.
we're municipal, we're a political subdivision.
Right.
Tech-
So anyway, those are the things, but if you could get like, and then we got advertised before that May meeting, right? 2 weeks, or is it 30 days for a new tax, or 10 days, or?
I mean, we can meet those qualifications, so.
I think we're getting the cart before the horse here a little bit, because back to Pam, Mrs. Gold.
She's new here, it's okay.
Well, I know that was your mom, so I met your mom, she's really nice too. I like your son, he's pretty good kid. Considering I'm,
Anyway.
Sorry, yeah. Back to the issue. This revenue.
Way off there.
Revenue, even once we pass it, and then you have, you pass the thing, and then you have an effective date, and then we're probably gonna miss the peak of the tourism sector for 2025. So we're not gonna really start seeing any revenue trickle in until, what, next year sometime?
July 1.
I would,
No,
I mean,
yeah, but
what are you talking about?
we don't have enough time to do an effective date for July 1.
Yeah, whatever date
There's
it
no
is.
way.
fourth quarter.
Yeah, so we could say you could say October,
Yeah.
October 1st as an effective date.
Yes.
And to Pam's earlier.
So why don't we do this? Let's just establish kind of a mental note that we're gonna shoot for 10/1 of 2025 as an effective date. You all back into it and get your heads put together and figure out how you wanna do this, right? Because then what Susan said, come July, when we do the dog and pony show for the 4-1s for your 2026 budgets, your 2026 budget's basically gonna be based off of, the current revenue stream. It's not gonna be based off of the new allocation, because we're not gonna have the money to cover that. And then what we can do at the first of next year, as this money starts flowing in, then the council can come in and we can make adjustments to approve adjustments to your budget to allocate those resources to these various different departments. Fair?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah,
I really do.
So let's just-
Maybe we can set a goal to have something proposed at your July
Yeah.
county council meeting,
Mhm.
so that anything that needs to get hashed out will be well hashed out.
Right.
The innkeepers and the public are aware of what's coming,
Yep.
and
Here's a
talk
suggestion.
the date of October 1st.
Yeah, deadline, the thing
Yeah.
starts October 1.
Yeah, so July, August, September, October, 4 months, that's $320,000 we're gonna lose.
We gotta
Let's
get-
say- Oh,
we
go ahead and
have
pass
to-
the tax.
We have to get it hashed, they cannot be rushed. If we rush
Well, no, I
it, what's
understand that.
gonna happen
Yeah,
is
I understand
that
that.
you pass it, we start collecting it, and then it's dissipated.
Now, let me play this. This $320,000 is not an insignificant number in this
I
community.
get that,
It's a
but we are
huge number.
behind, we are behind.
Yeah.
And so,
We are just plain behind.
and so,
And to
just hear me
her-
out
oh,
here,
okay.
hear me out. If there were, and because I wanna, I mean, if anybody in this room had $320,000 to give towards an important community need right now, I hope you would try to make it work, right? And that's what we're dealing with right here. So if we could capture 320,000 in between July and October, and I'm thinking out loud here, but my goal is to try to salvage that funding. And so I'm just trying to think if we could identify $320,000 in projects that we could just fund with money that will not exist otherwise, that
Okay.
everyone agrees to. I mean, I just think we need to not just give up 320,000 here.
Okay,
We
we-
have projects coming out of our ears.
We're not.
Understand what you're saying, we need a plan, but I'm wondering if there's like a two-phase, like, okay, look, we don't want to lose $320,000. Let's agree that we're going to pass this plan and do the October 1 deadline, but we're going to fund these projects with that 320. Let's just not give it up.
No, here's
Two
a,
questions.
hold on, here's a different perspective, here's a different perspective on that.
Yeah.
We're not giving up $300,000. What we're doing is we're using that $300,000 as an investment into doing this right. So we don't waste that $300 on something completely meaningless and irrelevant. We're getting the details worked out. So that $300,000 that we're not collecting, we're not losing, that is the cost, the investment cost of doing this right.
Okay, two
Yeah,
questions,
it's
two
also-
quick
It's
questions.
a big cost to do it wrong.
Two
too.
quick
It's a
questions.
huge cost. It's a $20 million cost to do
Well,
it
we
wrong.
can still do it right in that extra 4 months is what I'm saying. Like,
Let me ask these questions that may relate to it. Can we put it into a holding fund by any means?
It goes into your CBC fund.
It's
period.
in the CBC.
So they do what they want. The other thing is we were
No, no,
talking
no.
briefly.
No, pause on that thought. They have an approved budget. They cannot spend more than their approved budget.
So this year they're stuck?
Right, for 20, I mean, an additional appropriation,
Yeah.
Yes.
right.
So,
So I, like, even if you implement it that it's effective July 1,
yes.
yes, you start collecting the dollars. Even if you don't have a plan for how to use those dollars, you're collecting them into the CVC fund. The CVC can only spend up to its approved budget
So the money will sit until it was appropriated. and
until
we
it is
agreed to
appropriated.
And we would have to actively appropriate it.
So we can leave it sit?
Yeah,
We could, I mean,
but,
let's just think about that.
but the ordinance that we need to do for the collection of the innkeeper's tax and how it's going to be spent is going to drive the whole thing from here on out.
Is that true? It's gotta be one or the both involved?
What ordinance do you think you're passing? Let me clarify that. Your role as council is to pass how much of this tax you're implementing and what the deadline is for implementing that. When is your effective date?
So you're saying it doesn't include how it's going to be used?
Correct.
We need to address that though. So that was one of my questions to you.
I'm
Legally,
not
how do
saying-
we address that?
I'm not saying that you
Can we
don't. I
address
mean,
that in the ordinance or do we have to pass another ordinance?
you're controlled by statute.
Right, but I'm
Meaning-
saying, I'm talking about the
Explain it to 'em.
detail, like if part of this new innkeeper's tax is to help to help cover Deer Run Park for, 8 new pickleball courts that are going on there, which is tourist driven, the disc golf course that is tournament grade level,
Pump track.
the pump track, I mean, Deer Run Park is heavily
Is that in
tourist.
your park and rec budget?
Yes,
Well, it's,
well, the maintenance.
they have a 5-year plan for it.
The maintenance of Parks and Rec, it's all under that umbrella.
So I guess then the CVC needs to include that in their budget as here's what we're willing to give to the county and here's,
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
These details need to be worked
okay.
out because if we just pass the tax, then we're doing basically pass the tax to find out what's in the tax. Find out how it's gonna be, pass the tax to then find out how it's gonna be spent. I wanna know before I say yes to raising this tax, I want to set details, guidelines.
Can they do that?
Absolute.
I
Can
mean,
they
details
set
of-
detailed guidelines about how this money's going to be spent before they raise the tax?
We're council, we have to approve that, we have to approve it. What we're saying is, if you come to us for appropriation of this money in your budget, this is what we're going to approve it for.
But you approve that when you do their annual budget.
She's saying there are budget
But
limitations,
I
restrictions.
don't
Now,
want to
one
spring it on, I don't want to spring it on
Okay.
CBC every year.
Here's the way-
This is what we're gonna approve.
practical issue of how it may come down. Parks and Rec has a budget. Instead of us paying it, we say CVC pays it. Is that reasonable? With this
I
additional
wouldn't
money?
say CVC pays it. I say CVC would include in their budget a grant to the nonprofit, the county, in order to cover that portion of the budget.
Well, we could shift
So-
it midstream, you're saying?
So, yeah, it's what an additional appropriations for. You don't have to appropriate all of this every year, all the time. Right, and-
Remember, Susan said just that 10 minutes ago, what's the council's hammer?
It's not approving the budget.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay,
Right.
that's the hammer.
And so technically your ordinance can be more restrictive than the state code. So if you want to restrict it more than convention and visitation development, your ordinance can do that.
Right, and that's some of the details we need to look at.
But it's not.
Because I want,
But I don't want you to think that you tell the CVC what they're gonna put in their budget.
no, that's not what I'm saying. I hope I was misconstrued to hear that.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like.
No,
I'm good.
I mean, it's-
Too late, Aaron's already on social media.
So, yeah.
So, just a comment, I'm Phil McCown. The 320 that I heard, I believe that represents 4 months, and if I'm correct, I actually think there are 3 months from July, because don't include October is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 240 instead of 320.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
Oh, well, yeah, 240,000, yeah, well, that's like.
That's not chump.
Oh, maybe
What was your opinion? What should we do?
Oh, another
We're
detail, hold
gonna put you
on.
in charge of the
Let's have
council.
lunch.
Something I tried to say earlier that I think that needs to be addressed, another detail of this, is as Pam mentioned earlier, they've got reservations through what? Probably through October.
Through our graduation next year.
Yeah, next, yeah.
So
We're gonna have a lot of
if
phone calls.
if we implement this and the broad net of just implementing this sweeps everybody in there, then we're pretty much forcing them to redo a reservation agreement. So how much of that do we want to grandfather in And
No,
exactly
I think we're trying to make this
Yeah,
far more
you're making a
complicated
way
what it really needs to be. And here's my takeaway right now, this is what I want to take away from this conversation. I would like to hear from the CVB, okay, when you guys want this new tax rate to go in effect. CDC, when you want the new tax rate to go in effect, okay? Because I'm assuming, based on what your input, that you got some stuff on your end you're gonna have to do to kind of get prepared for it.
I mean,
And
it
then,
would be just as easy to do it on July 1st as it would be on October 1st,
Yeah, okay.
except for
Right.
just having more of the lead time.
Yeah.
It's the same.
yeah,
tweak
and I don't,
software.
and I don't think, when we, you know, the council just needs to make a decision, that it's gonna be implemented, and here's the effective date. And then once the effective date kicks in, back to Susan, hey, whatever revenue flows in, it goes into that, whatever that fund number is that it flows into. And then in the interim, you guys work together to hammer out how you're gonna allocate the money. Because Mr. CVC, we have the hammer and we can go, no, he ain't giving it to you, sorry. Go back to the drawing board. Now, I do have one follow-up question. Is there an opportunity for improvement on how the hospitality sector reports the tax they collected in the treasurer's office? Because I heard someone say here that it's all paper-based currently, and we could go to a cloud-based web platform, which would make it much easier for everybody to report and turn in, you know.
Yes.
Share your state versus
And
local.
it would be marvelous
Would it?
if when we implement the start date of the increase in taxes would coincide with implementing that easy way to pay the tax.
Okay,
It would, even though they don't connect,
right.
to be able to offer that extra perk at the same time would help the pill be maybe a little bit easier to swallow. And it would save the county, it should
Labor
save the
costs.
county money. It
Okay.
should say postage, it should.
And is this
save the
cloud-based
state.
platform, we'll have lunch and talk about it, because I need to learn more about it. Does that give you the ability then to just go online and do it?
I would pay my sales tax and innkeeper's tax and food and beverage tax exactly the same way, on exactly the same day, in a tenth of the time.
Okay, we need to get that done.
This is
So,
what was discussed. at
Council,
our-
I'm gonna go, now that I've got a relationship with, I'm gonna go talk to the treasurer and figure out how we get that done. Make
Somebody
that
call her
happen.
and warn her.
Well, that needs to happen.
Yeah,
Ken,
seems.
I remember it was 2 or 3 months ago, I think, at our regular council meeting, the treasurer talked about.
That's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah. And she talked about. the
Because if I was in the
interest-
hospitality sector, I'd be furious. Having
Yeah,
to come under here and
hundreds of
I'd be like, are you nuts? This is stupid. Where we all break the stone.
Susan, did you find something?
Yeah, you have an ordinance on it. You have an ordinance that's the process that you do here, so you'd have to repeal the ordinance.
That's the ordinance for this issue?
Yeah.
Can I have that?
You can have a copy of
Is there
it.
anything in it, like
Give it to Julie and she can make a copy.
pertaining to the use of new funds or anything, or is it just
No.
standard?
Okay, so we gotta have.
It's just about
Make
payment.
7 copies, please.
Yes.
No, I don't need one.
Right. We have to have Susan, I have to get, talk
4
to,
copies, 5.
talk to the treasurer, and then talk to Tim, because the commissioners, I'm assuming, have to write the ordinance.
No, it's a council ordinance.
Okay, so the council you're gonna draft the ordinance, the new ordinance needs to be drafted, so that we can implement and go from paper-based to cloud-based system.
It's to the state collecting our innkeeper's tax, not the county.
Okay, whatever, I don't know,
Oh,
it
that's
just
what
needs to
that
be
was.
done.
Okay, I thought that was something else.
All right.
Okay.
Other counties do that?
Some,
We gotta get it done.
Okay, another question is it a two-step process that we want to approve the money comes in, and the second one could be an ordinance that says, this is how, well, we don't even control, but we could say, this is how we don't want it used, somewhere. What you're saying, we don't tell the CVC how to use that money.
But we established guidance.
I mean, I think you're already establishing that guidance with your group that you have convening together. I
Is
mean,
that satisfactory?
Yeah, no, I think it's perfectly fine existing within the existing statute. The CVC, regardless, I can come up and ask the CVC tomorrow for $1.5 billion to go to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Well, we're gonna give you 1.2 instead. They have the power to do that within the statute. regardless, so.
And we have the power to say, nah, you don't.
Yes.
So would you be in favor of October 1 getting the money or July 1?
July 1st.
Yeah, let's do July 1st. Let's get our act together and get it done, hammer it out.
And the other thing about that, we did have issues such as the parks. There are some solid issues that seem like they might be inherent into that, like the parks, maybe the Pioneer Village, stuff like that.
Yeah,
They're no-brainers.
We called it shovel-ready projects
Right.
that we can say to the community were, we're things that we're doing that may seem tourist-related are really gonna benefit you too.
Okay.
That'll be important.
So July 1 is the target date.
All right, so let's real quick, it's 12:01, I'm like burnt out on this. Susan, we got to vote in June, and then we vote again in May. We can vote in May, and we can vote in June, with effective date of July.
July 1st.
Yep, and then you got to like draft, you got to do your whereas stuff. Okay, so that needs to go on the agenda for May and June for the regular council meeting, so we can do the first vote, and then we can do the second vote.
Well,
So, and that's it. Done, made a decision.
oh, isn't that nice?
Motion to adjourn.
Careful, we don't make decisions here.
Well,
We can make consensus, have consensus.
Yeah,
We went in a direction.
Make it
Consensus.
Hold on,
We'll make
hold
decisions
on,
until-
Jim. Hold on.
What are you talking about?
When's our next council meeting?
It's the third Monday of the month.
19th, I
19th. Yeah. And then our meeting is.
We're May 14th and
Okay,
then
good.
May 19th.
Good, okay. So at least we can talk with the tourist, because this whole conversation, as you all know, has been, hey, we want to make sure we have a plan before we pass the tax. So now we're finding that we lose a couple $100,000 just for no reason unless we can find, like, we got to talk through how we.
I think you'll appease a lot of the people by saying that those funds cannot be allocated without the CDC coming here for additional allocation, and then the majority of the council agreeing
Approving it.
to that.
Yeah.
So I think that'll put a lot of people's minds at ease to say that we're not gonna just waste the money.
Well, on that
But
point.
what we have on that though then is a snapshot in time verbal agreement that doesn't apply 4 years down the road. Because we haven't established guidelines.
Well, that comes.
And reasons for it.
That comes in the next 4 months.
So do we want to have that guideline by October 1st?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the.
Is that two
I mean, I think
deadlines? You want,
that's-
is that reasonable?
Yeah,
Give you some flex time, get people on board, blah,
At
blah,
that
blah.
point though, if we've already approved the tax increase, then what's the incentive for anybody to work on what guidelines?
I agree.
That's a good question.
So I say, I want detail.
It has to be done. I mean, it's our incentive.
We don't have to raise
As
it
far as I'm
8%.
concerned,
Don't you think she's gonna be in here in every council meeting if you guys go willy-nilly on this?
I hope so.
And start approving a budget that's
I hope so.
insane?
I hope so.
Like every
Yeah, I mean,
innkeeper in your county would be in here. Like, why are we paying this extra tax if you guys are just throwing out money?
I know, but Brian, I think he wants to make sure that we pacify any preconceived notions so that they're on board. This is what's been going on, is we got you guys in proactive, and let's keep it that way. So is October 1st too early? Is that what you're saying? Too early to get it all together and get everybody on board?
No.
Okay.
It would be if we keep going.
All right.
Especially
Yeah, and I've,
bump it up.
yeah, like I was talking during the break, we can put in a subcommittee to help move this forward concretely if we need to.
So Susan, what's the best practice here? We're getting ready to move forward with discussions about a new innkeeper's tax on a more serious level, because it just happened, right? We just got authority to do this. What's the best practice in terms of our meetings? I mean, I like this tourism leaders group, and I don't think there's any conversations we're having that couldn't be had in public. I mean, it's not like we're just trying to do what's best with the funding and talk through it. Should we, it's council's decision.
Yeah,
The tourism
what's the
leaders.
question?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the question? Best practice for what?
For meeting and then going through this process of making this decision for the council, because that's really what's happening. I mean, the council is saying, hey, tourism leaders, essentially, we want you to help come up with an investment plan so we can pass this tax. And so I just want to make sure that, it's public in the right way, and if you don't have any input, that's okay. But,
So,
yeah.
The CVC's meetings are open to the public. They're subject to the open door law. Technically, the CVB, because they get primary funding from tax dollars, are open to the public.
Yeah.
They should be following the open door law. A group of you hashing out kind of what direction this goes is a group of you hashing that out.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's going to have to be involvement of the commissioners because I'm guessing the commissioners own the Pioneer Village and all of the parks and the fairgrounds and the Salt Creek Trail and the covered bridge.
Yeah.
I mean, like, are we?
That's true.
I'm really confused at what you mean. What is the best practice? You've now directed me to draft an ordinance for effective date of July 1 where we're increasing this tax. You guys are already meeting to help hash out and guide some direction for here's the things that fall into the convention and visitation development. They're going to have to present a budget at their meeting that gets approved in an open meeting. They're then going to have to present a budget to county council at an open meeting that gets approved at an open meeting. What other these are the best practices.
It's more the tourism leaders group I was talking about as we meet kind of outside of.
Scott, I will say though, just for the
Not
CVC and the CVB meetings every month, we discuss what we talk about in those meetings.
Right, and we do the same in council.
So, I mean, and that's just simply because the leaders that are involved on the CVB in particular want to know
It's good.
and are very much invested in it. So we
Yeah.
do discuss everything that's going on,
Yeah.
and I don't hide anything, so.
Yeah, we don't either, we're talking openly here, and so we just want to continue that, and so it's not the publicly outlined process that I'm asking about, it's the tourism leader. It just gives me a little bit of pause, but we have this broad representation there from all the sectors that are impacted, and so.
Yes, and Kevin Patrick's there as well.
Yeah,
so.
and got a commissioner there, yeah, I mean,
Mastermind, we've got bright, successful people at the table
Yeah.
that are trying to solve problems like they do every day in their businesses and in the field out of Pennsylvania.
and no decision that is ever made will happen outside of a public meeting. These would be recommendations to a public body in a public meeting where decisions are made publicly by appointed elected officials. So I think we're okay. I just want to kind of go through that, make sure get off on the right foot here.
So, I mean, just at a time, because we're talking about deadlines and things like that. So, I mean, do we want to plan to have some kind of community engagement event in June before the tax goes into effect in July? Or like, how do you want to do that from optics
There's a whole
standpoint?
As early as possible.
Well, here's the other dynamic of this, is if a portion of these funds will be competitive for tourism-related projects, we got to flush that out. How will that go? Who's on the committee that reviews it? I think Kevin all this said was CDC's going to be pretty burdened to give out. That's just a heavy lift, right? We haven't done that traditionally. We've done a piece of that, 120,000 a year, but we're going to need kind of some capacity and I would like to see a more broad representation of stakeholder groups on that committee, not just lodging. I want to see the tourism industry.
Can you expand the CDC?
We tried, we were not successful getting language in our legislation.
Oh, that's my statute.
Retail, shops, outdoor rec and parks in that leadership of the CDC, and we didn't get it through. But we can do that in this committee. We can make sure the tourism sectors are represented.
Is that limited by state statute?
No, I don't think so,
I
Susan.
think it might be.
Oh, you mean the committee or?
The CBC.
It is. No, the CBC is, but I mean the tourism committee.
Yeah.
Or the review committee of the grants, I think needs broader representation. And I don't think, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that a subcommittee would be dictated by state code, like the composition of it or anything like that. But we want that input. And so I think we're good. We do have, I think at our meeting I'd like to do it before that, we got to go to 1 week meetings. We've got kind of separate pieces of this. We've got that we need to kind of divide, delegate, and kind of.
I put that in my last agenda, in particular, to actually assign out pieces of these to individual stakeholders to start.
Yeah,
especially going to these bodies who aren't traditionally, like with the parks and recs, and I mean, at some point, these boards have got to go in and say, okay, what can we allocate anyways?
Yeah, we need to help the public, really these nonprofits, understand that funding is going to be available. We want them to compete heavily for it and be successful, and We want to fund the best projects, and so people need to know that's possible, know it's coming.
And you've talked a lot about a process at the CBC because the CBC can demand reporting.
Yeah,
on the
we
use
do
of the
it.
funds. and
That's
all
right.
that stuff.
Grant administration, like foundation becomes an important partner here, I think, and
Well, the alternative to weekly sessions is having a subgroup go do work sessions to try and come up with this and report. If you're
Yeah.
open to that, whatever you think needs to move forward.
Sir in the back, did you have a comment? You have 2 minutes.
Motion adjourned.
Okay.
Who got him in?
So, yeah, we've got some serious work to do. I like the October timeline because I can breathe a little bit, right? Capture the funding, and got to restore trust in our agreement, like we're moving towards an agreement though, right? You bet.
So as far as public, presenting it to the public, I think probably, first of all, there should be an effort on the part of the CBC and the CDB to educate those that are going to be collecting the tax. Even to suggest the language and how you handle a customer that's like not happy because all of a sudden you change the price on them. Whether, I mean, just things like that, just nuts and bolts. This is just for that community, for the innkeepers. And then later on, when we get the fine tooth comb thing going through how this is actually going to be allocated, then you could do something a little broader for the public.
Jimmy?
There are some additional complexities to other establishments. Cornerstone Inn has a simpler model where they don't use the Airbnbs and the extra OTAs out there. So when you have businesses that rely on Booking.com and Expedia and such, who's going to call those customers? Because there's a middleman there, and so is Expedia going to call them? Are we going to call them?
The state, I wonder how that works.
Here's what I'm going to say about that. 'Cause most of the time, and I'm just speaking with Hillsborough and Moondance primarily, is that most of the time when somebody makes a reservation, it's only a $50 deposit. And you do not pay your entire length of your reservation until 2 weeks beforehand. So most of the people who have made reservations from July on, they've only paid the minimum that they need to pay. And then the collection will happen once you get to that automatic date with your credit card on file.
So you're gonna notify them now? Instead, there's been nothing going on until that third?
I don't know if the platform would even notify them. It would just be the standard tax that you would pay when your card is automatically charged.
But they know what the tax is when they make the reservation.
Right.
And then they're going to be stuck with this higher fee. Like, you guys didn't tell me this price, and somebody's got to tell them. So it's going to cost a lot of time, and we also need to capture, there are going to be some, more than zero, but less than all. Some people are going to say it's not worth it.
Correct.
So as CBC, we probably need to look at.
But I have talking points
some
written
relief
down
for
here.
that.
What do you mean relief?
Because it's the time it takes for a property owner to call all their, to do this, to implement what they're asking, is going to take time. It's going to take time and money, and then you're going to have a certain number of people that are saying, I don't want it. So this is going to create harm for the current reservations we have. It'll be more than zero, but it won't be everything. I think you're still going to have more money coming in, but it won't be probably as much as you think, because there's going to be fewer reservations made in the future as well. So $800,000 is maybe ideal if you have the same movement. Now in the future, it can be more than that, because if you're able to use some of that money to invest into resident infrastructure that draws people in, because our quality of life that are here, the amenities are here, then you're going to increase it.
That's the objective.
Over
I
time.
think that's the expectation.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's
we
going to
expect
take
the economy to grow because of this investment.
Yes.
As council, and that's where we kind of look at you and say, hey, we're going to put 20 million into your economy and your industry. You better grow it, right, with that money, right? And so, I mean, I think that's a fair expectation, right? We are taxing people to invest in your industry.
to the tune of $21 million, okay? Surely, we can get 3% plus growth annually off that. I mean, just in general, anyway, we're already doing it, right, in the industry. So now we're gonna pour a bunch more in. It should be extremely helpful, I would think.
If you steward the money wisely,
Yeah.
yes.
It's the objective.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there'll be a little bit of a bump. Anything else?
If we adjourn.
Okay, take a second.
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned.
Nap time.
All right, thank